Pocket aces are the dream hand. The quiet thrill of seeing two aces stare back at you never fades. Yet for many players, that dream hand can become a nightmare when things go wrong. Tonight, we'll explore every angle of pocket aces, from the math that makes them powerful to the patience that keeps them profitable. Settle in, slow down, and learn how to turn excitement into calm precision at the poker table. Chapter 1. The Power of Aces. There is a quiet electricity in the air the moment you peel back two aces. For most players, it is the best sight in poker, a surge of confidence that feels almost invincible. Yet beneath that excitement lies the deeper truth of what it means to hold the strongest starting hand in Texas Hold'em. The goal of this chapter is to slow that heartbeat down, to see pocket aces not as a thrill, but as a moment to breathe and prepare. Power without control can create chaos, and aces, more than any other hand, remind us of that balance. Pocket aces are dealt about once every 221 hands. The rarity alone gives them mystique. When you sit through hours of average hands, folding and waiting, the arrival of aces can feel like a reward from the game itself. But poker does not reward emotion, it rewards discipline. Many players win small pots with aces and lose large ones because their excitement clouds judgment. True mastery begins not when you celebrate the cards, but when you treat them as part of a long process of patient decisions. Aces dominate every other starting hand, pre-flop. Against a single random hand, they are roughly an 85% favorite. Against another pair, such as kings, they still hold a massive edge. The numbers are beautiful in their simplicity, but they also tempt you into believing the battle is already won. The reality is that no hand guarantees victory. Even the strongest holding can crumble when too many players enter the pot, when board textures shift, or when emotion overrides logic. Understanding aces begins with acknowledging this vulnerability. Imagine sitting in early position at a full table. You glance down at two aces and feel that familiar pulse of adrenaline. The temptation might be to raise larger than usual, to push opponents out and protect your hand. But protection is rarely about size. The best players raise their standard amount, calm, consistent, unreadable. They understand that deception begins with consistency. Aces are already strong. There is no need to announce it. The hand wins most when it feels ordinary to others, when it hides in plain sight. Every hand of poker tells a small story, and aces set the stage for that story with quiet authority. The early action you choose dictates how many characters join you. Too many, and the story grows messy. Too few, and there's no reward. This is the first lesson of pocket aces. They are not a destination, but a decision point. The power is not in the cards, but in how you manage the energy they create around the table. At live tables, aces carry psychological weight. When players sense that you might have them, their behavior shifts, hands fidget, voices change, and hesitation creeps in. Experienced players recognize this and remain still. Calmness conceals strength. If you appear at ease, opponents are less likely to suspect the power of your hand. In online play, where tells are replaced by timing and frequency, the same concept applies through pattern. Consistency in bet sizing and rhythm becomes your shield. Another layer of power in aces is how they anchor your emotional state. They can raise your heart rate, pull you toward greed, or teach you patience. Many players forget that poker is a long conversation between hands, not a series of isolated events. Each decision with aces reflects your overall approach to the game, Are you reactive or patient, impulsive or deliberate? The hand becomes a mirror, showing you who you are as a player. When the flop arrives, the story changes, and that's where most players lose control. But for now, in this first chapter, the lesson is simple. Recognize what aces represent. They are potential energy. They are control waiting to be exercised. They are opportunity disguised as pressure. Treat them with humility, and they will reward you in the long run. The next time you look down and see those two aces, pause before your hands move. Take one slow breath. Feel the weight of the moment. Then act with calm confidence, not excitement. The best poker players know that the true power of aces isn't in the cards themselves, it's in the stillness of the person holding them. Chapter 2: The Mathematics of Domination. Poker is a game of emotions played through the language of mathematics. Pocket aces are the clearest example of that balance, beautiful in simplicity, dominant by design, yet misunderstood by those who chase luck instead of learning odds. In this chapter, we slow down and walk through the quiet certainty of numbers. The goal is not to memorize percentages, but to feel their rhythm, to understand how probability shapes confidence, and how logic steadies the hand that wavers under pressure. Pocket aces stand at the top of every pre-flop equity chart. Against a single random hand, they win roughly 85% of the time. Against pocket kings, they still hold about 80%. Even against coordinated hands like suited connectors or medium pairs, their edge remains vast. These numbers are not just statistics, they are structure. They remind you that poker is not chaos. Every decision, every bet, every raise is framed by mathematical truth that repeats across thousands of hands. The short term may fluctuate, but the long term always bends toward order. When you understand the math, you stop fearing the individual outcomes. The variance that frustrates so many players becomes background noise. An ace cracked by a weak hand does not signal betrayal by the cards. It simply reminds you of probability's nature. Even the best hand loses sometimes, and those losses are baked into the equation. The moment you accept that, poker transforms from emotional turbulence into calm repetition. You play not to win every hand, but to make good decisions over time. In practical terms, the power of aces before the flop comes from domination. Most opponents will enter pots with hands containing an ace, a king, or suited connectors. When you hold two aces, you block half of their potential strong combinations. That is called card removal, an invisible advantage that subtly shifts the deck in your favor. You have already removed key outs from their range. They are drawing thinner without even knowing it. Quiet advantages like this add up over thousands of hands, defining why good players seem lucky, when in truth they are consistent. It helps to imagine probability as a soft current running beneath the table. Some players thrash against it, trying to force outcomes. Others learn to float with it, letting mathematics carry them through the waves. Aces are a lesson in that surrender. You do not need to control what cannot be controlled. You simply align yourself with the odds, play the hand correctly, and let time do the rest. Over weeks and months, the math rewards patience with steady profit. Understanding domination also prevents emotional misreads. When a player with pocket kings calls your pre-flop raise, they are entering the pot dominated. They hold a strong hand, but one that trails yours in almost every scenario. Knowing that helps you plan. You can size your bets to keep them involved without giving them proper odds to catch up. You can project confidence without aggression, controlling the pot through logic instead of fear. The math becomes a quiet guide in every decision, like a metronome keeping the rhythm of calm play. For newer players, one of the most useful exercises is to imagine how aces perform across thousands of simulated hands. Software can show you exact win percentages, but the real value comes from visualization. Picture the cards colliding, the boards running out, the chips moving back and forth. In those repetitions, the pattern becomes clear. Aces win often, but not always. That simple truth frees you from expectation. The hand no longer defines you, your discipline does. Mathematics also extends beyond raw percentages. It shapes the way you think about expected value, or EV. Every time you raise with aces, you create positive EV if opponents continue with weaker hands. Over time, positive EV decisions accumulate into consistent winnings. Negative EV decisions, like slow playing too often or allowing multiway pots, erode that advantage. This is how small mistakes compound quietly. The math doesn't punish instantly. It simply waits for patience to prove it right. When you begin to view poker through these numbers, you discover peace. You realize that every coin flip, every variance swing, every cracked hand is still part of the same long equation. Aces are powerful not because they always win, but because they win enough to sustain everything else. They are the foundation on which strong strategy rests. You do not chase luck with them. You respect their structure. The beauty of this understanding is that it quiets your mind at the table. There is no need for fear when an unfavorable flop arrives, and no need for excitement when chips start to flow your way. You are simply walking a path already drawn by mathematics, and that path, over time, leads upward. The mathematics of domination is not about memorizing percentages, it is about trusting them. It is the art of calm expectation. When you look down at two aces, you are not gambling. You are investing in a process that rewards logic over emotion. And like all things in poker, the longer you remain patient, the more the numbers begin to feel like truth itself. Chapter 3: The Psychological Trap. Pocket aces are more than just cards. They are an emotional test, disguised as an opportunity. Every player, from beginner to professional, feels something stir when those two aces appear. It is the combination of hope and fear, power and vulnerability. This chapter explores that quiet tension, the psychological trap that turns strength into weakness when emotion takes the lead. The goal here is not to suppress feeling, but to see it clearly, to slow it down, and to find balance between confidence and humility. When you first hold aces, the body responds before the mind does. Your pulse quickens, breath tightens, and a small voice whispers that this could be the moment, the hand that changes the session. That spark of excitement is natural, but it can also be dangerous. Emotion narrows perception. When adrenaline floods your thoughts, you stop reading the table and start protecting your dream of victory. The moment you feel entitled to win, you are already losing clarity. The art of poker begins with awareness of that shift. Many players fall into the same pattern. They overplay their aces out of fear. Fear of a bad beat, fear of a scary flop, fear of missing value. Fear in disguise looks like aggression. They raise too large, push too fast, and drive away the very opponents who could have paid them. Others go the opposite direction. They play timidly, calling instead of raising, convinced that danger is waiting. Both reactions are emotional, and both surrender control of the hand. Mastery means finding the calm middle path, assertive but measured, confident but patient. It helps to remember that every player who has ever held aces has lost with them. Every professional, every champion, every teacher of the game has watched those cards fall short. You cannot control that outcome, but you can control your response. When you lose with aces, it does not mean you failed. It means the probability simply played its role. When you win, it does not mean you are brilliant. It means the numbers aligned. Separating self-worth from results is the first step in overcoming the psychological trap. Another layer of this challenge comes from perception. At the table, your opponents are not reacting to your cards. They are reacting to you. The more visibly excited or tense you become, the more information you give away. In live poker, this might show through subtle movements, a deeper breath, a faster bet, or a sudden shift in posture. Online, it may show through timing, hesitation, or pattern. In both cases, the trap of emotion is not only internal, it broadcasts outward. Calm players win, not just because they think clearly, but because they reveal nothing. The mind also creates invisible pressure to protect aces. This protection instinct makes you view every community card as a threat. When the flop comes 10-9-8, panic flickers, as if the board itself is plotting against you. But the truth is simpler. The flop is neutral until proven otherwise. Strong hands remain strong until data says otherwise. Learning to breathe through uncertainty keeps you grounded in logic rather than reaction. Imagine sitting with aces while an opponent raises your continuation bet. The old instinct might be to panic, assuming the worst. But a calm player recognizes patterns. They remember that most raises are not monsters, they are bluffs, semi-bluffs, or thin value plays. You do not have to fight back immediately. You can call, observe, and let the hand unfold. The emotional player rushes. The patient player gathers information. This difference, repeated over thousands of hands, defines long-term success. Tilt, the quiet storm of frustration, often begins with strong hands gone wrong. When you lose with aces, the sting feels sharper than any ordinary defeat. The mind clings to the belief that you should have won. But poker does not recognize should. It only recognizes decisions. The way to escape the trap is to reframe losses as data, not injustice. You take a breath, note the mistake if there was one, and move forward with composure. That calm reset is a skill as real as any strategic move. Over time, awareness becomes your defense. You begin to notice the early signs of emotional drift, the quickened breathing, the tightened jaw, the thought that says, "I deserve this pot." The moment you catch that thought, you pause. You reset. You remember that aces are just another hand, subject to the same variance as all others. Their strength lies not in the outcome, but in how they teach you to master yourself. In this way, pocket aces become a meditation on ego. They remind you that skill in poker is not only technical, it is emotional. They test whether you can remain still in moments of excitement, whether you can detach from the illusion of control. The player who learns that lesson begins to win more than chips. They win inner balance. The cards stop dictating mood, and calm becomes their constant companion at the table. When you next hold aces, notice what happens inside you. Notice the spark, the expectation, the pulse. Then let it pass. Breathe once, settle your shoulders, and play the hand as if it were any other. The psychological trap dissolves the moment you stop needing to win with them. And in that quiet, you begin to understand what true control really feels like. Chapter 4: Table Image and Timing. Poker is not only about the cards you hold, but how others perceive the story you tell. Pocket aces give you power, but that power becomes predictable if you always play them the same way. In this chapter, we explore how table image and timing work together to shape your success. The goal is to help you see poker as a conversation, not with words but with rhythm, observation, and restraint. When you learn how others read you, you gain control of what they think they see. Every player builds an image over time. Some are remembered as aggressive, others as careful. Some are feared for constant pressure, while others are trusted because they rarely bluff. Table image is not something you declare, it is something you earn through repetition. Every bet, every fold, every hesitation adds to the portrait your opponents build in their minds. With aces, this portrait determines how much value you can extract. If you appear tight and cautious, your raises may scare away action. If you've been loose, you might get paid handsomely when holding the nuts. Understanding this perception begins with self-awareness. Ask yourself what the table sees when they watch you. Have you shown down strong hands recently? Have you bluffed and been caught? Do you seem calm or impatient? These small details create ripples that last throughout a session. Strong players adjust their aces, not just to position or opponent, but to how they themselves are being perceived in that moment. They are actors and observers at the same time, balancing authenticity with control. Timing is the twin to table image. It's not only what you do, but when you do it. Quick actions can communicate confidence or anxiety, depending on context. Slow actions can create pressure or suspicion. The key is consistency. When you always act at a steady rhythm, your timing becomes unreadable. Opponents stop trying to interpret pace and start reacting to the board instead. That's when your aces operate in silence, gathering value unnoticed. Imagine a game where you've been patient for an hour, folding marginal hands and showing quiet discipline. When you finally raise with aces, the entire table senses that something may be different. Some fold immediately, others call reluctantly. But if, earlier in the night, you had mixed in a few bluffs or shown willingness to enter pots lightly, your raise now tells a more complicated story. This is where timing meets table image, a dance between predictability and surprise. You build patterns only to break them at the right moment. In live poker, timing tells are physical. Players watch how long it takes you to count chips, how quickly you call, how smoothly you move. Maintaining calm, consistent motion protects your information. The goal is not to act robotic, but to act grounded. If your hands move the same way with aces as they do with nothing, opponents have no signal to read. In online play, timing tells manifest through bet speed and size. Instant actions can imply premeditated strength or weakness, depending on who's watching. Learning to randomize timing keeps you unpredictable and balanced. Another layer of image comes from conversation and demeanor. The chatty player who suddenly goes silent before betting often gives away strength. The quiet player who suddenly talks might be nervous. Understanding these patterns helps you recognize them in others and prevents you from revealing them yourself. With aces, the temptation is to look natural, but real naturalness comes from practice, not performance. The more calm you feel inside, the less you need to disguise. The art of timing also applies to how you manage momentum. Sometimes the right move with aces is to let the hand breathe, to check for a moment, invite a small bet, and then reassert control. Other times, the right move is to seize initiative immediately. There is no universal formula. Timing lives in awareness. You watch how the table flows, where the energy sits, and when attention peaks or fades. You act not from impulse, but from observation. There is beauty in restraint. Knowing that aces are powerful allows you to play them with gentleness. You don't need to rush the pot or prove dominance. When your table image suggests composure, your timing amplifies it. Opponents feel uncertain. They start second-guessing. They call more often. They fold less predictably. That confusion is your quiet advantage. At its core, table image is how others describe you when you're not there. Timing is how they feel you in the moment. The two form a loop that repeats every hand, every session, every career. The most successful players control both without forcing either. They are calm observers of their own performance, adjusting tone and tempo like a musician guiding a piece of music. The next time you play aces, think less about what your cards are worth, and more about how they appear. Notice your breathing, your rhythm, and your posture. Ask yourself how your opponents perceive your pattern, and how you might shift it just slightly to your benefit. When you master that awareness, aces stop being just a strong hand. They become an instrument of timing and illusion, played by someone who knows how to control silence as much as sound. Chapter 5: Early Position Strategy. Playing pocket aces from early position is a lesson in discipline and responsibility. You act before most of the table, setting the tone for what follows. It is both a privilege and a burden, the moment where strength meets structure. This chapter will guide you through how to use that position wisely, balancing the urge to win quickly, with the patience to let value build naturally. The goal is not to dominate the table, but to control the flow of the hand without revealing your power. When you sit in the first few seats at the table, your information is limited. You must act before others have shown their intentions. Many beginners misread this as a disadvantage, but it is simply a different kind of challenge. With aces, you hold the strongest possible start, yet your decision still shapes how many players will join and how large the pot will grow. The key is consistency. Whether you hold aces or something modest, your opening behavior should look nearly identical. That consistency makes your strong hands more profitable and your weaker hands safer. A standard open raise from early position is often 2.5 to 3 times the big blind in cash games. Some players instinctively raise larger with aces, hoping to scare away trouble. But raising too large sends a signal that something unusual is happening. A well-balanced strategy keeps your raise size the same across all strong holdings. When your aces look identical to your suited connectors, or mid-pairs, opponents cannot adjust correctly. They will call with dominated hands, unaware they are already walking into a trap. Early position also demands awareness of what can happen behind you. There are still several players left to act, each capable of calling, raising, or re-raising. Your goal is to make a bet that builds a pot while discouraging too many callers. Aces lose power in multiway situations because their equity drops as more hands enter. You want 1 or 2 opponents at most. Think of it like managing traffic. You are not trying to block the road, just to keep it clear enough for safe passage. Another skill in early position is stack management. Deep stacks invite complexity, while short stacks simplify decisions. When you and your opponents are deep, It's easy to get caught in large pots that test patience later. Setting pot size early gives you control later. If you start small, you have room to breathe when the board turns uncertain. If you start huge, you limit flexibility. The strongest players think 2 or 3 streets ahead, even as they place the first bet. Sometimes you'll encounter a re-raise after you're open. In early position, this moment can feel tense because you're unsure whether the table is attacking your range or holding genuine strength. With aces, the correct move is usually to re-raise again, keeping the initiative. Yet your sizing should remain calm and logical, not emotional or defensive. When you act quickly or too large, observant opponents sense fear. When you act smoothly and proportionally, they sense balance. The appearance of control is often as important as the strategy itself. There are also moments when deception becomes useful. In games with frequent 3-betting, calling with aces occasionally can disguise your range. But this must be done with intention, not anxiety. If you slow play, do it to trap an aggressive opponent, not because you fear scaring them away. You should already know how the player behind you behaves. If they are capable of squeezing often, a flat call may earn extra value. If they are cautious, aggression remains best. Early position does not mean weakness, it means responsibility for pace. Post-flop play begins with the tone you set pre-flop. When you enter the pot with composure, you invite smoother decisions later. If you build tension early, the entire hand becomes more fragile. Think of aces as an anchor. They do not need you to push. They need you to stay steady, so the rest of the table drifts toward you. By holding structure early, you create conditions where opponents make mistakes naturally. In live games, early position play with aces often defines your reputation. Other players notice how you act when strong. If your timing or speech changes, they remember. Over time, those small deviations become patterns. Maintaining the same behavior with all hands protects your long-term image. Online, where actions are data rather than gestures, balance still matters. Your raise sizes, frequencies, and reaction times tell the story. Write that story deliberately. Finally, remember that power in poker is quiet. Early position with aces is not a place to show dominance. It is a place to demonstrate stability. You are not chasing luck or forcing outcomes. You are guiding a process. By the time the action returns to you after the flop, the entire hand will reflect the confidence you projected at the start. That is the hidden strength of early position play, calm leadership disguised as routine. The greatest players win with aces, not because they outplay their opponents after the flop, but because they play the first bet perfectly. They raise with discipline, manage risk, and invite opportunity rather than fear it. When you master that opening moment, every future decision becomes easier. The hand feels lighter, more natural. Early position is not about surviving, it's about beginning correctly, with quiet precision and unwavering calm. Chapter 6. Middle Position Considerations. Middle position is where control meets flexibility. You are no longer first to act, yet you are not last either. It's a balanced place, one where observation begins to guide your choices, but uncertainty still lingers behind you. Holding pocket aces here feels like a gift wrapped in patience. You've seen a few actions before it's your turn, and that information gives you room to breathe. But how you use that space determines whether your aces will shine or stumble. This chapter is about learning to steer quietly, to let others reveal their strength before you reveal yours. In middle position, the flow of the table becomes clearer. You may see a limper, an open raise, or complete silence before the action reaches you. Each scenario calls for a different tone. When the table folds to you, raising is routine, a smooth, balanced open that mirrors your other hands. Your raise size should be consistent with your overall strategy. If you raise 3 times the big blind with medium pairs, do the same here. Predictability is your camouflage. When your opponents cannot tell what your sizing means, they make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, your aces quietly earn more. If someone has already raised, the decision becomes more interesting. Many players instinctively 3-bet, eager to build a pot and assert control. With aces, that instinct is often correct. A well-sized re-raise isolates one opponent and pushes the rest away. Yet the manner of your raise matters just as much as the size. Calm hands, steady timing, and proportional sizing communicate confidence without arrogance. You are not announcing strength, you are allowing it to exist naturally. Occasionally, calling instead of re-raising can be valuable. Against highly aggressive players who frequently squeeze from later position, a flat call may set a subtle trap. You invite them to attack, then spring your advantage once they commit too much. This is not slow playing for vanity, it's controlled misdirection. The difference lies in intent. A calculated trap uses prior knowledge of your opponent's behavior. A nervous call made out of fear is simply hesitation. One is artful, the other is accidental. Position relative to the blinds also influences your decision. In middle position, you still have several players left to act, including those in late position who might respond with aggression. Your job is to anticipate them. If the table behind you is full of loose, unpredictable players, it may be wiser to re-raise strongly now, rather than risk a multi-way pot. If those players are tight and cautious, you can afford to disguise your strength slightly. Every choice with aces is a negotiation between risk and reward, between protection and patience. Stack depth plays another crucial role. With deeper stacks, the potential rewards grow, but so do the dangers. Deeper play invites creativity from your opponents, calls with speculative hands that can strike hard when the board cooperates. You must be prepared to navigate complex post-flop situations without panic. Shallower stacks, on the other hand, simplify your task. The best path often becomes straightforward aggression. Raise, re-raise, and allow the math to favor you. Knowing your environment determines your rhythm. One of the most overlooked skills in middle position is observation. You are seated in the heart of the table's conversation. You can watch how early position players act and prepare for how late position players will respond. This awareness lets you control tempo. When the table is quiet, you can accelerate. When it's aggressive, you can ease back. With aces, your power lies not in speed, but in timing. You wait for the table to show its energy, then decide whether to meet it or redirect it. Post-flop play from middle position rewards awareness even more. You'll often find yourself in heads-up pots against players acting before or after you. Here, your position becomes your shield. Acting after early position players gives you information. Acting before late position players teaches restraint. The discipline to avoid overextending in uncertain moments is what keeps your aces profitable. Strong players understand that control sometimes means doing less, not more. In live poker, middle position also offers the perfect stage to observe behavior. The players before you reveal their tension or relaxation, their confidence or hesitation. You see their bets, their pace, their posture. These are subtle gifts. Online, the data is quieter, but still there. Timing, bet frequency, and pattern recognition fill the same role. Every small piece of information helps you make better, calmer decisions. When you play aces from middle position, imagine yourself as a conductor, not a participant. You are guiding the flow without needing to shout. You let others set the tempo, then adjust it gently with a raise or a pause. You are not reacting, you are shaping. Every chip you place is part of a larger composition, a slow, balanced symphony that builds value without drawing attention. The best poker players treat middle position aces with reverence. They do not rush to win the hand, they invite the hand to unfold at its own pace. Each street is an opportunity to gather information and extract value with patience. The temptation to dominate fades, replaced by quiet precision. You hold the best hand in the deck and the calm to let it breathe. That combination is what turns power into profit and profit into peace. Chapter 7. Late Position Power. Late position is where pocket aces feel most alive. Here, the cards are still the same, two symbols of quiet strength, but the perspective shifts entirely. You are no longer guessing what the table will do. You have already watched it unfold. Acting last gives you the gift of vision, and vision is the purest form of control. This chapter is about using that advantage softly, turning knowledge into patience, and timing into profit. Late position is not about domination through force. It is about steering the table with invisible hands. When you are on the button or in the cutoff, the entire hand begins with information. You've seen who entered the pot, who hesitated, who bet, and who folded. You know how many opponents remain, and how deep their stacks are. With pocket aces, that awareness shapes your every choice. You no longer need to protect blindly. You can adapt precisely, adjusting bet sizes, isolating the right opponents, and guiding the pace of the hand like a slow, steady current. In most games, a raise from late position carries less weight than one from early seats. Players know that position grants freedom, so they often suspect wider ranges. This skepticism works in your favor. A raise from the button, with aces, looks just like any other positional play. You can build larger pots with less fear of scaring people away. The same logic applies when facing prior action. If an early player opens and you re-raise from late position, it seems routine. Few realize that behind that standard move sits the strongest hand in the game. But power without patience can become recklessness. In late position, you must balance aggression with empathy. You want to extract value, not force folds from every hand that trails you. Overly large raises, or immediate four bets, often drive away the very calls you need. Think of your aces as a magnet. Subtle attraction works better than brute pull. Small, consistent raises invite curiosity. Players convince themselves they can outplay you. Post-flop. They call. And when they do, your calm confidence becomes profit over time. Position also changes how you plan your post-flop rhythm. Acting last means you get to see every decision before yours. This advantage turns potential uncertainty into clarity. If multiple players check to you, you control whether to apply pressure or build slowly. If someone bets into you, you decide whether to raise for protection or simply call and observe. This flexibility is why aces in late position often produce the most consistent results. You are navigating with the full map in view. The beauty of late position lies in how it amplifies small skills. Reading body language, tracking timing tells, observing betting patterns, all become more powerful when you act after everyone else. You can see the story forming and choose where to add your line. A player who hesitates before calling might reveal uncertainty. Another who glances away after betting may be bluffing. Each clue adds a note to the quiet melody of information that only you can hear from this seat. Late position also allows for creative deception. Occasionally, you may choose to call instead of raising pre-flop, particularly against an early raiser whose range is strong. This flat call can disguise your hand, encouraging players behind to enter the pot or even attempt a squeeze raise. When that happens, your aces spring to life in a perfect trap. The key is awareness. Trapping without intent invites chaos. But trapping with a plan, with position and patience, turns unpredictability into art. Even with all its advantages, late position comes with responsibility. Because you act last, you often dictate the emotional pace of the table. Your calm presence, your unhurried decisions, your measured bets, all of these influence how others behave. Tilted opponents slow down when you slow down. Nervous ones fold when you project stillness. You control not just the cards, but the energy of the room. That quiet authority defines the difference between playing in position and truly mastering it. In online poker, the same truths hold, though they wear digital faces. Bet timing, frequency, and board coverage replace physical tells. Yet the advantage remains identical. Your information is complete before you act. You can apply pressure selectively, knowing when to continue and when to pause. Late position play with aces is the purest form of strategic serenity, seeing everything, deciding calmly, and acting with purpose. There is also a psychological freedom in being last. You no longer fear the unknown as much, because most of it has already revealed itself. That peace transforms how you play. Instead of protecting your hand, you begin to nurture it, growing it slowly, inviting mistakes from others, and keeping the pot exactly the size you want. You are no longer reacting to the table is reacting to you. The lesson of late position is simple but profound. Power is quiet when it is complete. You don't need to prove that your hand is strong. You already know it is. Your edge comes from timing, patience, and the gentle command of perspective. With aces in late position, you are both player and observer, orchestrating the rhythm of the hand, with every calm, deliberate motion. The next time you sit on the button and find those two aces staring back at you, pause before you act. Look around the table. See the patterns. Hear the silence. Then move as if you've been here 1,000 times before, because in the long run, you will be. And every time, your stillness will speak louder than any bet you could ever make. Chapter 8. Small blind and big blind play. Playing pocket aces from the blinds feels different. You are no longer guiding the hand from a position of comfort. Instead, you begin the battle out of position, acting first on every street after the flop. It's a place of tension, a space where discipline matters more than excitement. In the blinds, aces are both powerful and exposed. This chapter will teach you how to protect that power quietly, using precision instead of panic, and calm awareness instead of control through force. The blinds are defensive positions by nature. You've already invested chips before the cards are even dealt, and every pot you play begins at a disadvantage of information. Yet when you look down and see two aces, that imbalance vanishes for a moment. You hold the best starting hand, but it's crucial to remember, the advantage only lasts if you play it properly. Many players ruin aces from the blinds by overcompensating, betting too large, trapping too often, or chasing isolation without balance. True mastery in the blinds begins with subtlety. From the small blind, your first challenge is commitment. Acting second to last pre-flop gives you a chance to shape the pot before being out of position post-flop. When action folds to you, a standard raise is fine, but when facing prior aggression, re-raising is almost always correct. The sizing should reflect your plan, large enough to discourage multi-way pots, yet small enough to keep weaker hands interested. Remember that your main goal from the blinds is control, not intimidation. You are building a hand that will often need to navigate awkward spots after the flop. When the action comes around to the big blind, the decision tree changes slightly. You've already invested more and are guaranteed to act last pre-flop, but first afterward. This position tempts some players to slow play, hoping to trap. But slow playing aces out of position often backfires. When you check and allow several opponents to see the flop cheaply, you invite trouble. Straights, flushes, and two-pair combinations lurk in every direction. What was once dominance becomes danger. The cleaner path is often to 3-bet or even 4-bet early, taking command before the flop and simplifying the hand. Isolation is your friend in the blinds. The fewer opponents you face, the easier your decisions become. Two aces shine brightest in heads-up pots, where your control over ranges is clear. Each additional player added to the pot chips away at your equity and increases variance. A disciplined pre-flop raise is not aggression, it is self-defense. You are protecting clarity, not forcing victory. Once the flop arrives, your challenge becomes maintaining composure, out of position. You will act first, setting the pace of the hand. Most players bet automatically with aces, but balance is key. A small continuation bet on safe boards keeps your range consistent. Overly large bets announce your fear of being outdrawn. On dangerous boards, ones with connected or suited textures, smaller bets or checks may serve better. They slow the hand down and invite mistakes from opponents who misunderstand your range. Calm flexibility, not rigid pattern, is what sustains long-term success. Pay attention to how your opponents respond. In the blinds, you are often the one under observation, but that can become your advantage. The small blind and big blind are excellent places to watch timing and reaction. Notice who hesitates before calling, who bets instantly when checked to, and who adjusts their sizing when the pressure changes. Each pattern you observe builds your intuition. Even when you lose a hand, that information becomes an investment in future profit. One of the hardest skills for blind play with aces is knowing when to let go of control. Acting first after the flop can create the illusion that you must lead the hand. But sometimes, checking and allowing your opponent to act first reveals far more. They may bluff into you or bet too large, giving away information. Patience here is more valuable than power. By letting others speak first, you can read the language of their bets with greater accuracy. Live poker adds another dimension to blind play. You sit in the least comfortable seat, watching every action from an awkward angle. But this vantage point also lets you study human behavior without being noticed. From the corner of your eye, you can observe reactions to the flop, body language during bets, and posture shifts after losses. In online play, where visual tells are absent, your focus shifts to rhythm and consistency. The same calm timing and balanced better patterns apply. Control the tempo, and you control the narrative. Ultimately, playing aces from the blinds is not about aggression, it is about maintaining composure in the face of discomfort. You will never have position after the flop, so your edge must come from foresight and planning. The hand plays itself when the board cooperates, but when it doesn't, your stillness will make the difference. Fold when clarity disappears, bet when logic demands, and never chase outcomes out of emotion. Think of the blinds as the storm edge of poker. Every hand feels slightly louder, slightly faster. Yet with aces, your calm becomes your armor. You don't fight the noise, you rise above it. Each thoughtful raise, each measured call, each composed fold tells the table that you are unshaken by circumstance. In time, this steadiness becomes its own reputation. You are not just defending the blinds, you are defending the discipline that defines every great player. Chapter 9. Facing a 3-bet. There is a moment in every session when the calm rhythm of the table is interrupted by a sudden raise back in your direction, a 3-bet. When you hold pocket aces, this moment should never feel like a threat. It should feel like opportunity. A 3-bet is the sound of your opponent saying, "I have something strong," and that's exactly what you want to hear when you're holding the strongest hand in poker. This chapter is about how to stay composed in that moment, how to respond with balance, and how to let logic guide your choices while emotion stays silent. When someone 3-bets your open, the first step is to breathe. Many players rush, acting on instinct. They either shove immediately, hoping to end the hand, or they freeze, overthinking the possibility of traps. The truth lies in between. Pocket aces thrive in 3-bet pots, but only when handled with clarity. You have the best hand, but your opponent's range still matters. A thoughtful player treats every 3-bet not as a challenge, but as information, a small window into how their opponent views strength. The response begins with context. Where is the 3-bet coming from? A raise from the blinds carries a different meaning than one from middle position or the button. Some players only 3-bet with monsters, others use it as a weapon to control the table. Your task is to match your response to their tendencies. Against tight, disciplined players, a larger 4-bet may extract maximum value because they'll call or shove with worse hands like kings or queens. Against loose, aggressive opponents, you can trap by just calling, letting them continue to fire post-flop with weaker holdings. The right answer is never universal. It is guided by awareness. Stack depth also plays a critical role. With shallow stacks, there is little room to maneuver. Most of the time, the correct play is simple. 4-bet, get the chips in, and trust the math. Deep stacks, however, open the door to creativity. You have space to vary your strategy, to call in position, and let your opponent continue betting. In deep games, aces win not only through raw equity, but through patience. The longer you let your opponent tell their story, the more likely they are to overcommit to it. Position amplifies this principle. When you are in position, you can afford to call 3-bets more often. Acting after your opponent gives you control over the pace and pot size. You can float on safe flops, allowing them to build the pot for you. Out of position, the opposite is true. Clarity is more important than deception. A strong 4-bet reasserts control, discourages multi-way play, and forces decisions before the flop rather than after it. You are not trying to surprise anyone. You are simplifying the game into one where your advantage is clean and measurable. Psychology plays quietly in this moment too. The 3-bet often creates tension, especially for newer players who feel attached to aces as something fragile. They worry that another player's confidence must mean danger. But the math tells a different story. Against any realistic 3-bet range, pocket aces remain overwhelmingly favored. Your job is not to outthink yourself. Your job is to stay centered, to trust that strength does not need to announce itself loudly. Your table image also shapes how others respond to your 4 bets. If you've been active, raising often and entering pots freely, your re-raise may not get the respect it deserves. You'll be called more often, which is good for value. If you've been quiet, your 4-bet may seem suspiciously strong and drive folds. Recognizing how others perceive you allows you to adjust your sizing naturally. There's no need for fancy misdirection, just clear awareness of what your opponents expect. Aces are also a perfect lens through which to study stack-to-pot ratio, or SPR. When facing a 3-bet, your goal is to create an SPR that favors commitment. With aces, that usually means lowering the ratio to a level where you can comfortably play for stacks post-flop. By raising pre-flop to the right size, you make post-flop decisions simple. This reduces future anxiety and turns potential chaos into calm structure. When you do face resistance, perhaps a cold 4-bet from another player, pause again. You are rarely in danger, but composure matters. Rushing leads to errors in judgment. Even when you know aces are strong, slowing down reinforces discipline. You are reminding yourself that poker is a process, not a reaction. Every time you breathe before acting, you're building habits that protect you when the situation isn't as clear. In live poker, 3-bet situations are electric. Chips move faster, voices shift, and eyes narrow. This is when most players give away more than they realize. Stay still. Your calmness becomes unreadable. Let others mistake your silence for uncertainty. In truth, your stillness is confidence disguised as patience. Online, the dynamic is similar, though quieter. Timing tells replace posture, and steady rhythm replaces body language. Acting smoothly, without hesitation, keeps you unreadable there too. Facing a 3-bet with aces should never feel like conflict. It should feel like alignment, the moment when your opponent's aggression meets your preparation. You don't need to fight for control, you already have it. The 3-bet is simply their invitation to join the story you've been waiting to tell. Accept it calmly. Respond with logic. Play with patience. And let the numbers, as they always do, carry you home. Because in the end, the power of aces against a 3-bet isn't just in their strength, it's in your ability to stay composed when the table gets loud. Every steady breath, every measured raise, every decision made without tension, becomes a reminder that real power in poker is silent. You don't chase control. You become it. Chapter 10: The Art of the Trap. There is something alluring about the idea of trapping in poker. The thought of letting your opponent build the pot, unaware that you hold the best hand, appeals to every player's imagination. With pocket aces, this temptation becomes even stronger. The cards themselves seem to whisper, "Let them bet," but as many have learned, a trap set at the wrong time is no longer clever, it's careless. This chapter is about learning the true art of the trap, understanding when to slow down, when to accelerate, and how to use stillness as a form of strategy rather than indulgence. A good trap begins long before the cards are dealt. It starts with your table image. If you've been active, raising often and showing aggression, your sudden passivity carries meaning. Players will see an opportunity where none exists. If you've been quiet, however, a slow play looks suspicious. The secret to trapping successfully lies in understanding what story the table already believes about you. You don't create traps in a vacuum. You build them on perception. Pocket aces are a gift that can win big pots or lose them quietly, depending on how you choose to play them. The first decision comes before the flop. Most of the time, the best play is to raise or re-raise, but occasionally, calling a raise can serve a deeper purpose. You allow aggressive players behind you to squeeze, re-raising to isolate, believing you are weak. That is when the trap closes. But even then, you must be careful. If you let too many players into the pot, your aces shrink in value. A trap that feels exciting in theory can become dangerous in practice. Every hand you slow play invites uncertainty. The key difference between a smart trap and a bad one is information. When you have position and can see how others act, traps become safer. You have room to adjust. Out of position, they are much riskier. You can't control the pot once the flop comes down, and what began as patience can quickly turn into helplessness. The best players know that traps are not about deception for its own sake. They are about guiding opponents into making the first mistake. Imagine a player to your right, who raises frequently, applying pressure on every hand. You've been folding for a while, letting them take small pots uncontested. Now, you pick up aces. Instead of re-raising, you call. They see weakness and attack again after the flop. Every bet they make builds the pot for you. This is the perfect trap, one built on observation, timing, and calm control. It doesn't rely on luck or guesswork. It's the result of reading your opponent's pattern and stepping aside just long enough for them to fall into it. The danger, though, lies in overconfidence. Many players believe they can outsmart everyone at the table by trapping too often. They slow play in situations where protection is more valuable than deception. On wet boards with draws, for example, betting is safer than waiting. Aces are strong, but not invincible. Failing to protect them allows opponents to realize their equity cheaply, turning your stillness into their opportunity. A well-timed trap is beautiful. A careless one is costly. The mindset behind trapping should be patience, not pride. When you check or call instead of raising, you are not trying to look clever. You are creating space for your opponent to misinterpret the situation. But patience is not passivity. It's a controlled pause. You are still paying attention to stack sizes, bet frequencies, and board texture. You are still ready to act when the right moment appears. A good trap has rhythm, slow at first, then sharp and decisive when the time comes to spring. Psychologically, trapping also tests your ability to wait. The longer you conceal strength, the more tension builds inside you. That tension can leak through your movements, your breathing, or even your timing online. Remaining calm during the trap is part of the skill. You can't control what your opponent will do, but you can control the stillness in your own decisions. The quieter your energy, the less likely you are to give away your plan. In live poker, the art of trapping is visual. Your posture, your hands, your gaze, they all tell part of the story. The best trappers blend into the flow of the game. They don't act differently when strong. They don't stare, smirk, or force false confidence. Their actions feel routine, natural, unremarkable. Online, the art becomes statistical. Timing, bet sizing, and board interaction form the language of deception. A sudden check in a spot where you always bet means something only if your opponent has been watching long enough to believe it. Trapping with aces is most effective when it feels accidental. You let others believe the situation unfolded naturally, without manipulation. That illusion protects you. By the time they realize the truth, their chips are already committed. But even as you enjoy those moments, remember that the goal of poker is not to outwit every opponent. It is to make the highest value decisions over time. The best players trap sparingly and play straightforwardly most of the time, because honesty itself becomes a disguise when used often enough. The art of the trap is really the art of patience. It is knowing when to stop steering and when to let the current carry you forward. It is trusting that your preparation, your table image, your awareness, your timing has created the conditions for success. You don't need to chase victory. You need only to stay still, to wait until the hand reveals its perfect moment. And when that moment arrives, you act without hesitation, calm and clear. When you trap correctly, it doesn't feel dramatic. It feels inevitable. Your opponent bets, you raise, and everything unfolds in silence. No surprise, no tension, just gravity doing its work. That is the true art of the trap, not surprise, but serenity. You created a space where mistakes could happen naturally, and you had the patience to let them come to you. Chapter 11. Playing Aces in Multiway Pots. Few moments in poker test your discipline, like watching several players call your raise while holding pocket aces. At first it may feel flattering, as though everyone at the table wants a piece of you. But beneath that thrill lies danger. Aces are strongest when isolated, fragile when surrounded. Every additional opponent chips away at their dominance, introducing more ways for the board to turn against you. This chapter is about how to stay calm in those crowded moments, how to manage pot control, and how to protect your edge without panic or greed. When multiple players call your preflop raise, your equity shrinks with each additional hand. Against one opponent, aces are overwhelming favorites. Against two, their win percentage drops noticeably. Against three or more, variance takes over. What was once a commanding position becomes uncertain ground. The first step in these situations is acceptance. You can't always prevent a multi-way pot, especially at loose tables or low-stakes games. But you can manage it with clarity. Before the flop, the best prevention is sizing. Larger raises from early position help discourage overcalls. Yet balance matters. Raise too much, and you reveal strength. Raise too little, and you invite chaos. Your job is to find the middle path. A slightly above average raise, consistent with your overall table image, protects your hand without announcing it. The calm steadiness of your sizing communicates confidence without desperation. Once the flop arrives, awareness becomes your greatest tool. Multi-way flops create layered dynamics. Someone may hit a draw, another a middle pair, and another a top pair. The more players in the hand, the more cautious you must be with your continuation bets. Many players fall into the trap of over-betting for protection, fearing that every card could turn against them. But big bets in multi-way pots often achieve the opposite. They isolate only better hands and fold out the weak ones that might have paid you later. Precision, not panic, is what protects profit. Instead of automatically betting, pause and evaluate the texture. On a dry flop such as King 7-2 Rainbow, a small continuation bet is enough to thin the field while still extracting value. On coordinated boards, such as 10-9-8, with two suits, restraint is wiser. Checking can control the pot and allow aggressive players to bet into you. By observing their reactions, you gather valuable information. Each player's action narrows their range. You are not playing aces against random hands anymore. You are playing aces against revealed stories. The mindset in multi-way pots should shift from domination to navigation. You are not trying to win the pot immediately. You are guiding the hand through complexity, with patience and observation. Remember that aces, while statistically superior, are still just one pair after the flop. Treat them as such. Overpairs win small pots consistently and lose large ones carelessly. If the board turns dangerous and aggression erupts, folding becomes an act of wisdom, not weakness. Protecting your stack is part of protecting your edge. Position again becomes vital. In early position, you are blind to others' intentions. Bet smaller and more conservatively there, letting the action unfold before committing further. In late position, you have the advantage of seeing bets and calls before deciding. You can choose to apply pressure or exercise control. Each street should feel deliberate, as though you are walking a narrow path between caution and opportunity. One step too far in either direction leads to imbalance. Multi-way pots also reveal emotional habits. When you're up against several opponents, tension builds quickly. The mind starts imagining threats, flushes that don't exist yet, straights that aren't complete. This anxiety can make you fold prematurely or bet recklessly. The remedy is breath and patience. Focus on the information at hand, not the fear of what might come. Aces win more through composed decisions than through panic-driven protection. In live play, these pots often carry visible energy. You can feel the anticipation around the table, hear the chips, see the eyes darting between the flop and your stack. Use that noise as grounding. Let it remind you that your strength lies in stillness. Others are reacting, you are observing. Online, the same principle applies, though silence replaces sound. Watch timing patterns. Quick calls often mean drawing hands. Long pauses can indicate uncertainty. Your calm observation gives you an edge over those swept up in emotion. Another layer of mastery in multi-way pots is learning when to simplify. Sometimes the smartest choice is to reduce the number of decisions left to make. If the board is dangerous and you sense strong resistance, it may be best to bet once and then shut down if called. This structured approach prevents emotional spirals and protects long-term profit. You do not need to win every battle to win the war. Discipline earns more chips over a lifetime than stubbornness ever could. When you do win a multi-way pot with aces, do so with humility. The victory is not proof of dominance, it is proof of balance. You navigated complexity without fear, kept control under pressure, and made logical decisions in the face of chaos. That calm under fire is what separates great players from hopeful ones. The goal was never to crush the table, it was to stay centered, no matter how loud the game became. The lesson of aces in multi-way pots is simple. Strength is not about overpowering the table, but about staying clear in the noise. You don't fight the chaos, you step aside and let it pass. You play smaller pots, make smaller mistakes, and preserve larger victories for when the field is quiet again. The calm player survives. The emotional one collapses. When several players call your raise, remind yourself, your edge is not in the hand you hold, but in how gently you choose to play it. Chapter 12. Flop textures that favor aces. When the dealer spreads the flop, everything you've planned with pocket aces begins to take shape. The board tells a story, and your job is to read it slowly and clearly. Some flops bring comfort, wide open spaces where your hand remains powerful and secure. Others feel crowded and uncertain, full of hidden draws and quiet danger. In this chapter, we focus on the calm flops, the textures that favor aces. These are the moments where patience and clarity let you extract steady value without fear. A good flop for aces is one that limits your opponent's ability to connect meaningfully. Dry, uncoordinated boards such as King 7-2 Rainbow, Queen 5-2, or 9-3-3 Rainbow provide safety. There are no strong straight or flush draws to worry about, and the range of hands that can challenge you is narrow. On these flops, your hand's relative strength remains near its pre-flop peak. You have what poker players call range advantage, a structural edge built on the fact that you can hold all the strongest combinations while your opponents often cannot. But the advantage isn't just mathematical, it's emotional. Safe flops allow you to slow down internally. You can breathe, observe, and focus on subtle cues rather than scrambling to protect your stack. The calm that follows a safe flop is not permission to relax completely, but an invitation to play thoughtfully. Your aces will usually be far ahead, but how you handle that comfort determines how much value you earn. The key is balance, betting enough to build the pot while keeping your range believable. Many players make the mistake of overprotecting on safe boards. They bet too large, too fast, trying to get it over with. This rush not only scares away weaker hands, but also disrupts their rhythm. Strong players, by contrast, recognize that smaller continuation bets accomplish more. A modest 1/3 or half pot bet on a dry board builds value, while allowing opponents to continue with weaker holdings. The small bet keeps the hand alive, feeding long-term profit instead of short-term relief. Imagine sitting on the button with aces as the flop comes, Queen 7-2 Rainbow. You bet small, your opponent calls. Their call doesn't mean danger, it simply means curiosity. They might hold a weaker queen, middle pair, or a speculative hand. You continue with quiet confidence. Your bet size and timing remain steady, unchanging. You are not trying to protect aces, you are nurturing them. Every calm action invites another call, another small mistake from your opponent. Safe boards also give you opportunities for controlled deception. Occasionally checking a strong hand like aces on a dry flop can confuse observant opponents. It suggests weakness and encourages them to bet the turn. This technique, called pot control through deception, lets you harvest additional value from those who assume your silence means surrender. But like all strategic tools, it works best in moderation. Check too often, and your opponents learn to see through it. The beauty of poker lies in variety, guided by intention. Reading the board also means watching for small shifts in danger. A single turn card can change a safe texture into a treacherous one. But in the early streets, your focus should be on extracting clean value while the water is calm. Avoid inflating pots unnecessarily. The temptation to bet large with aces often comes from emotion, a subtle fear of what could go wrong. Fear creates imbalance, and imbalance is what strong opponents exploit. Trust the math, trust your plan, and let smaller bets do quiet work. In live poker, safe flops also create emotional stillness at the table. Your opponents will often glance quickly at the board, trying to hide their reaction. Pay attention to their breathing, posture, or speed. Players who flop weak pairs tend to act naturally. Those who miss entirely often reveal impatience. Every small cue helps you decide how much to extract. Online, this information arrives as timing, how long they take to call or fold, how their rhythm changes from hand to hand. Observation is your invisible advantage. The goal on favorable flops is not to win the pot fast, but to win it right. You want to earn value from second-best hands, pairs, top pairs, or even stubborn bluffs. Building trust through consistent bet sizing makes this easier. When your actions remain predictable across different hands, your opponents stop looking for patterns. They relax. And relaxed opponents pay off more often. Sometimes the best way to maximize value is by letting the hand breathe. Bet once and check the next street, or check first and bet later. Aces don't need constant protection, they need thoughtful pacing. This rhythm of play mirrors the rhythm of calm breathing, expansion, pause, contraction. You control the tempo, not by speeding up, but by slowing down until every decision feels natural and unforced. There's also beauty in acceptance. Even on the safest flops, the cards beyond your control will eventually decide some outcomes. You can play perfectly and still lose to a hidden draw or improbable run-out. The lesson isn't to fear that possibility, it's to understand that your control ends where probability begins. Safe boards are gifts of temporary peace. Your task is to use that peace wisely. When you play aces on a favorable flop, you are walking across solid ground. Each step feels stable, predictable, and steady. Your confidence should rise, but your heart rate should not. You are not celebrating the safety of the board. You are using it as space to practice precision. Quietly, patiently, without urgency, you let the hand unfold as it should. The pot grows at a gentle pace, and your aces remain what they've always been, calm, disciplined, and unwavering beneath the surface of the game. Chapter 13: Dangerous Flops and Overconfidence. There comes a moment when the flop turns against you. You raise confidently, with pocket aces. The chips move in your direction, and then the dealer spreads a board that changes everything. Perhaps it's 10-Jack-Queen with 2 hearts. Perhaps it's 7-8-9 all connected, or a board that blooms with suited cards. These are the moments that separate the emotional player from the mindful one. Aces are still strong, but the landscape has shifted. The purpose of this chapter is to teach you how to see danger clearly, how to manage fear without overreaction, and how to keep confidence grounded in reason rather than pride. Aces lose strength, not because they change, but because the world around them does. On coordinated flops, your opponents suddenly have more ways to connect, more draws, more pairs, more combinations that challenge your single pair. In multiway pots, that danger grows. The hand that felt like a fortress pre-flop becomes something fragile. Many players feel this shift and respond with panic. They bet too large, hoping to end the hand before the turn. But fear disguised as aggression often leads to bigger losses. The lesson here is simple. Protection comes from awareness, not from force. When the flop is dangerous, the first step is observation. Look not at the fear in your own mind, but at the story the table tells. Who called your raise? How did they act pre-flop? Do they play suited connectors, small pairs, speculative hands? Each opponent carries a range of possibilities, and only a fraction of those connect perfectly with the board. Dangerous flops may look terrifying, but most of the time, the actual threat is smaller than your imagination suggests. The disciplined player breathes through uncertainty. They don't fight the board, they study it. On a wet board with possible straights or flushes, smaller bets often serve better than large ones. Small bets gather information and maintain flexibility. A large bet feels like control, but leaves no room to adjust. If you get raised, you are trapped between committing too much or folding too late. By contrast, a smaller bet allows you to keep the pot manageable and observe reactions. You are giving yourself the freedom to make calm decisions later, rather than forcing outcomes early. Sometimes, checking is the strongest statement of all. When a board is especially dangerous and likely to hit your opponent's range, checking allows you to see how they behave. Many players interpret your check as weakness and attack immediately. When they do, you gain valuable insight into their confidence level. If they bet small and fast, they may be probing. If they bet large and tense, they may be protecting something real. The more you watch, the more you learn that danger can be measured, not feared. Overconfidence, however, is just as costly as panic. Some players see danger, but refuse to acknowledge it. They convince themselves that aces must always be good, that folding them would be a betrayal of strength. That mindset turns discipline into stubbornness. Poker punishes stubbornness, quietly, but relentlessly. The player who refuses to let go of their ego ends up feeding it to the pot. Remember that folding aces, though rare, is not weakness. It is understanding. You are not folding the best hand, you are folding when the story no longer adds up. Consider a hand where you hold aces on a board of 9-10 jack, with two suited cards. You bet the flop, and an opponent calls. The turn brings a queen. Suddenly, the straight is complete, and the flush draw still lingers. Betting again here is rarely about strength, it's about denial. Instead, slow down. Control the pot. Let your opponent reveal themselves. If they check back, the danger was imaginary. If they continue betting heavily, trust your read and protect your stack. The chips you don't lose matter as much as the ones you win. Emotionally, dangerous flops test your faith in logic. The human instinct is to defend what you believe is yours, the pot, the advantage, the pride of holding aces. But poker is not about ownership. It's about alignment with truth. The truth changes every street, and wisdom means following it without resistance. When you accept that some boards belong to your opponents, you free yourself from frustration. You no longer chase outcomes. You guide them when possible and release them when not. In live play, dangerous flops also change body language. Opponents who connect often shift in subtle ways, a slower breath, a deeper focus, a steady gaze. Those who miss may glance away, shrug, or move quickly to act. Use these cues without clinging to them. Online, the same shifts appear in timing. Instant bets often mean continuation bluffs, while delayed ones hint at real connection. In both environments, information flows like a current beneath the chaos. Calm players learn to feel it. The essence of handling dangerous flops lies in detachment. You must learn to separate the identity of your hand from your sense of self. You are not your aces. You are the awareness observing them. You decide whether to act or to wait, to continue or to let go. The board may favor others for now, but the discipline you practice today strengthens your edge for tomorrow. Every careful fold, every patient check, every well-measured call refines the balance between courage and humility. When danger appears, remember that aces are not fragile, they are just finite. They are a tool, and every tool has its limit. You win not by forcing them beyond that limit, but by recognizing where it lies. Sometimes the lesson is to bet small and stay in control. Sometimes it's to walk away untouched. Either path, when chosen calmly, protects your long-term profit and peace of mind. In the end, dangerous flops are not traps for your chips. They are tests for your discipline. The board will tempt you to react, to prove, to push. But mastery is quiet. It waits. It listens. It folds when necessary and bets when invited. Aces do not need your pride. They need your patience. And when the storm of the flop passes, that patience becomes the only strength that never fades. Chapter 14. Extracting Value on Safe Boards. Pocket aces are most beautiful when the board is calm. No draws, no traps, just quiet texture where your hand's strength stands unchallenged. These are the moments that separate the reckless from the refined, when a great player turns power into profit, not through aggression, but through patience and rhythm. This chapter will guide you through the art of extracting value on safe boards, the slow and steady process of inviting others to pay you without scaring them away. It's less about attack and more about balance, the harmony between what you know and what they believe. Safe boards are the reward for good pre-flop structure. When you isolate one or two opponents and see a flop like King 7-2 Rainbow, your aces retain nearly all their strength. But even then, danger doesn't vanish, it simply shifts form. Now the challenge is not protection, but precision. How much can you bet without revealing your hand's power? How much patience can you maintain when everything seems easy? Extraction requires both clarity and restraint. The first rule of value betting on safe boards is to think in small steps. Many players overestimate what they can win in a single hand. They bet large, forcing folds from every weaker holding, and leave chips on the table. The more skilled player takes the opposite approach. They bet smaller, keeping the opponent engaged across multiple streets. Small bets do not signal weakness, they signal intent. You are inviting the story to continue, chapter by chapter, until your opponent unknowingly reaches the end you've written for them. On dry flops, ones with few connected cards, a 1/3 or half-pot continuation bet often achieves the most. It builds the pot naturally and allows weaker pairs or backdoor draws to stay in. The key is consistency. Your opponent should not be able to tell whether your small bet means strength or uncertainty. When you always use similar sizes in similar spots, you create comfort. Players relax when they feel familiar patterns, and comfort leads to calls. Imagine a scenario. You open from the cutoff, get called by the button, and the flop comes Queen 6-2 Rainbow. You bet small. They call. The turn is an 8, harmless. You bet again, still small. The opponent hesitates but calls once more. By the river, the pot has grown smoothly, and you've earned value across 3 streets without tension. This is the quiet magic of disciplined value extraction. No fireworks, no drama, just logic repeated with calm precision. Sometimes, checking on a safe board can earn even more. A single check invites opponents to take the lead, especially those who can't resist testing perceived weakness. When you check with aces, it's not passivity, it's preparation. You are letting your opponent bet into a hand that dominates them. The trick is to stay composed. No sudden changes in posture, no rushed calls. Whether in live play or online, patience sells the illusion. The longer you wait, the more believable your story becomes. Psychologically, value extraction depends on empathy. You must understand what your opponent wants to believe. Weak players often crave reassurance. They need to feel like they're still in control. Strong players crave information. They want to see if you'll reveal anything under pressure. Against the first type, gentle bets work best. Against the second, timing and rhythm matter more than size. Every small shift in your pace communicates something, so practice making every action feel natural. When your decisions look effortless, opponents follow your lead. Safe boards also invite what professionals call thin value. This means betting for small profit even when there's a chance you could be beaten by a better hand. For example, on a board like Jack 5-5-2, your aces might only be called by weaker pairs, yet the small bet still pays over time. The key is to view poker as a series of averages, rather than moments. Every thin value bet adds a grain of sand to a growing pile of long-term profit. You're not chasing big wins, you're stacking consistency. In live poker, the process of value extraction is almost meditative. You watch for breathing, stillness, or subtle eye movements when opponents face your bet. Hesitation often means they'll call but aren't confident. Swift motions can indicate indifference. These small signals help you tune your sizing. Online, timing tells fill the same role. Quick calls often mean stubborn pairs, while long pauses suggest deliberation or weakness. Information seeps quietly into your awareness when you stay patient enough to notice it. A strong player knows that value extraction doesn't end when the river card falls. The final bet is your closing note, the moment where everything you've built either gets paid or ends in silence. A well-timed, softly sized river bet achieves more than a desperate shove. You're not trying to force action, you're leaving a door open just wide enough for curiosity to walk through. That curiosity is what brings the chips across the line. There's a gentle confidence in players who extract value well. They don't celebrate small wins or lament missed opportunities. They understand that poker is not about proving superiority, but about moving steadily toward equilibrium, small edges repeated endlessly. Each carefully sized bet, each quiet call, each disciplined fold forms part of that rhythm. Aces on safe boards remind you that the best players don't make money through explosions. They make it through calm repetition, through the steady hum of clear decisions. When you play aces on a safe board, your mind should feel quiet. You are not protecting, you are guiding. The hand moves naturally from street to street, your breathing stays even, and your purpose never wavers. The board favors you, but you favor yourself even more by staying balanced. The greatest victories in poker don't come from domination, they come from patience, from the calm courage to do the simple thing perfectly, over and over again. Chapter 15. Facing Aggression on the Flop. Every poker player knows that moment. You raise with pocket aces, see a decent flop, and just as you start to relax, someone fires back at you. A check raise, a sudden bet into the pot, an unexpected show of strength. It's the jolt that wakes you up inside the calm rhythm of the game. But the true test of skill isn't in avoiding those moments. It's in how you respond to them. This chapter will teach you how to stay composed when aggression meets your aces, how to separate fear from logic, and how to let clarity guide every decision when pressure rises. Aggression on the flop changes the tone of a hand instantly. You go from acting to reacting, from control to response. The key is not to let that shift unsettle you. Pocket aces are still powerful, but they are not immune to trouble. The first step is acceptance, understanding that your opponents will occasionally challenge you, and that their aggression does not always mean danger. Most players at most tables bluff far more often than they value bet. Remember that. It is the foundation for every calm decision you make under pressure. When you face a raise or bet, pause before acting. Take in the board, the stack sizes, and the texture of the action so far. Ask yourself what story your opponent is telling. A check raise on a wet board might represent a draw. A lead bet on a dry one might be a probe, testing your reaction. Sometimes it's pure bluff. Poker is full of small performances, and your task is not to fight them, but to watch them quietly until the pattern becomes clear. Emotion pushes you to answer aggression with aggression. Patience teaches you to answer it with observation. In many cases, calling is stronger than raising. When your opponent bets or raises into you, resist the reflex to reassert dominance immediately. A calm call keeps their weaker hands alive and their bluffs active. You give them space to continue betting into you, building the pot while revealing more information. Raising too soon often silences the story before it finishes. You scare away the bluffs and invite only stronger hands to remain. The greatest players know that control does not always come from taking charge. Sometimes it comes from staying still and letting the hand unfold. Position plays a central role in how you face aggression. When you're in position, you hold the advantage of perspective. You can call on the flop, watch how your opponent behaves on the turn, and make decisions with more information. When you're out of position, the challenge grows harder. Aggression feels louder when it comes from your right, when you must act first on every street. In those cases, keeping pot size manageable becomes your best defense. You're not surrendering control, you're redefining it. A small pot gives you space to think. A large one forces panic. Sometimes aggression deserves respect. When the board is highly connected, and an opponent who rarely bluffs suddenly raises, that's information too. The goal isn't to assume weakness in everyone, but to weigh probabilities with calm realism. Ask, does their range support this story? Do they act like someone confident or someone performing confidence? The longer you play, the more you'll learn to read this difference, not through logic alone, but through rhythm, the quiet pattern of timing, movement, and bet flow that runs beneath every hand. In live poker, aggression often has a heartbeat. The speed of the chips, the intensity of the gaze, the silence that follows, each detail tells a piece of truth. A rushed bet often hides uncertainty. A long, deliberate pause may hide strength. In online play, those cues turn into timing and frequency. An instant raise can mean automatic bluffing. A delayed one may signal genuine evaluation. In both cases, your stillness protects you. You give nothing away by breathing slowly and responding evenly. The hardest part of facing aggression with aces is the ego. There's a voice that whispers, "They can't do this to me. I have the best hand." That voice pushes you toward confrontation, not clarity. But ego does not win pots, observation does. When you let go of the need to prove, you become harder to exploit. You stop turning strong hands into traps for yourself. The board, the players, and the chips all become part of a calm puzzle, and you simply choose the next logical piece. At times you'll call down and win quietly, watching your opponent show a missed draw or weak bluff. Other times you'll fold, preserving your stack when the story clearly points toward disaster. Neither result defines success. What matters is that you acted without noise. You followed the logic, not the feeling. You stayed centered. That steadiness, the ability to remain clear when tested, is the real mark of progress. Facing aggression with aces teaches patience in its purest form. It reminds you that power isn't loud, and defense isn't fear. You don't need to dominate every hand. You need to listen, measure, and act only when the evidence aligns. Every check raise and every unexpected shove becomes another lesson in balance, how to stay grounded while the game grows loud. When someone attacks your aces, see it as a mirror. It reflects your progress as a player. The newer you are, the faster your heart beats, the quicker your hands move. But as you grow, your reaction slows, your breath steadies, and your mind clears. You see the aggression for what it is, noise within the pattern. And you smile softly, not from arrogance, but from understanding. Because you know the truth. Aces don't need to fight chaos. They simply wait for it to pass. Chapter 16. The Turn Card as a Storyteller. The turn is where every hand begins to reveal its truth. The flop sets the stage, but the turn decides the tone, whether the hand becomes a calm continuation of control or a storm of shifting momentum. For pocket aces, the turn is both a test and a teacher. It's the moment when the game transitions from early confidence to deeper reflection, where you learn to listen to what the board and your opponents are quietly telling you. This chapter explores how to interpret that story, how to use the turn to refine your plan, and how to let patience shape your profit. Every card that falls on the turn changes the structure of the hand. It completes draws, strengthens ranges, and redefines what is safe or dangerous. But beneath all that change, one constant remains: your ability to observe. The turn is less about reacting to the new card and more about understanding what it represents. It's a message about probabilities, about what hands remain possible, and about how your opponents are responding to evolving tension. If the flop is the spark, the turn is the truth that follows. When you hold aces, the turn can bring comfort or uncertainty. A harmless deuce or eight might confirm that your hand is still best. A king, queen, or another connected card can tighten the air, signaling potential threats. The difference between panic and clarity lies in preparation. You should already know which turn cards favor your hand and which require caution. This anticipation comes from thinking ahead on the flop, asking yourself, what happens if the next card connects the board? When the turn arrives, you're not surprised. You're ready. Your betting strategy on the turn should flow naturally from what came before. On safe boards, smaller bets continue to build the pot while maintaining control. On dangerous boards, a check can be as powerful as any wager. The turn is the street where you often decide whether the pot will grow large or stay manageable. Most players feel pressure here. They want resolution, a clear answer. But the best players learn to sit in the uncertainty. They treat the turn not as an endpoint, but as a paragraph in an ongoing story. Each sentence, each bet, builds meaning. Position magnifies your ability to read the turn. When you act last, the turn becomes a window into your opponent's emotions. A fast check may reveal fear. A sudden lead can show forced confidence. You can respond with tailored precision, bet small to test resistance, or check behind to trap. Out of position, the turn becomes more delicate. You are writing the story without knowing how your reader will respond. Here, balance is everything. You must protect your hand without exposing your intentions. Many players make the mistake of treating the turn as an obligation. They feel they must continue betting simply because they have aces. But strength doesn't demand action, it demands awareness. Sometimes checking is not surrender. It's a pause to see who tries to take control. When you check and your opponent bets, the story gains depth. You learn something about their rhythm, their comfort, their desire to define the hand. Poker, after all, is not played only with cards. It's played through narrative. Stack sizes and pot odds also become sharper tools on the turn. As the pot grows, each bet carries more consequence. You're no longer building casually, you're constructing outcomes. A small misstep in sizing here can echo through the river. Let your decisions feel measured, deliberate, and unhurried. Think not in terms of how to win this pot, but in terms of how to make the next decision easier. Good turn play is not about maximizing immediate profit, it's about setting up simplicity later. The emotional challenge of the turn lies in resisting impatience. The longer a hand lasts, the more invested you feel. Each card deepens your attachment. You begin to want closure, a clear victory or defeat. But poker doesn't reward impatience. It punishes it gently, but repeatedly. The player who forces action on the turn out of restlessness loses far more over time than the one who waits for clarity. Calm players learn to treat the turn as a breath between phases, an inhale before the river's exhale. In live poker, the turn is a spotlight moment. It's when players shift in their chairs, when focus narrows and the air grows thick with possibility. Use that tension to your advantage. Notice who stiffens, who exhales, who looks away. These are the quiet tells that reveal comfort or concern. Online, the same moment happens through timing. A quick check can mean indifference. A long pause can mean calculation or doubt. Each detail is part of the story unfolding, and you are its calmest reader. The turn also offers an opportunity to realign emotionally. Up to this point, the hand may have felt predictable, even mechanical. But now, variance stirs again. Embrace that feeling as a reminder of why you play. The game's beauty lies in its unpredictability, and aces, though powerful, are not immune to it. You are here not to control every outcome, but to navigate gracefully through change. That acceptance keeps you grounded when the turn card challenges your expectations. When the fourth card hits the felt, pause before acting. Let your mind grow quiet. Ask yourself, what story is being told? Who is leading it now? You or your opponent? What chapter does this card belong to? These questions slow your thoughts and sharpen your focus. The answers come not from impulse, but from patience, the kind that grows only through experience. The turn card is a storyteller, but only for those willing to listen. It speaks through texture, through rhythm, through the shifting energy of the table. With pocket aces, your goal is not to control that story, it's to interpret it. You are the quiet reader, calm and aware, turning each page with steady hands. And when you do, you'll find that the turn no longer feels like a moment of fear. It feels like what it truly is, a conversation between probability and patience, where only the calmest listener hears everything. Chapter 17. Pot Control with Aces. There's a quiet truth in poker that every great player eventually learns. Not every strong hand needs a large pot. Sometimes the path to profit lies not in building, but in managing. With pocket aces, this can feel counterintuitive. You hold the best hand before the flop, and instinct tells you to push. But real mastery comes from knowing when to slow the game down. Pot control isn't fear. It's discipline. The art of keeping a hand within a range that lets you make clear, profitable decisions, without letting emotion inflate the risk. The essence of pot control begins with acceptance. Even when you start with aces, you will not always win a large pot. The goal is not to extract maximum chips every time, but to avoid losing large ones when the board turns against you. Small wins accumulate quietly. Big losses echo loudly. The calm player sees poker not as a series of victories, but as a long conversation with variance. Pot control is how you keep that conversation peaceful. To understand it, start with purpose. Every bet you make should have a reason to build value, to deny equity, or to gather information. But when you bet without clarity, you surrender control of the pot's rhythm. With aces, especially on medium or dangerous boards, your power often lies in restraint. Betting smaller or checking doesn't mean weakness. It means you are choosing the size of the story being told. When the pot stays manageable, decisions stay simple, and simple decisions protect your edge. One of the most common mistakes with aces is overplaying them on turns and rivers when the board has changed dramatically. Players who feel entitled to win push forward, chasing the illusion of control. They bet big to find out where they're at, but big bets rarely reveal truth, they just polarize the action. By contrast, a check or small bet invites clearer information. Your opponent's reaction tells you everything you need to know. The quieter you play, the louder the table speaks. Pot control doesn't mean passivity. It means precision. You are guiding the hand with gentle, deliberate pressure, never fighting the current, only steering through it. When you bet, do so for value that fits the texture. When you check, do it with a reason, to induce bluffs, to protect against bigger pots, or to disguise your strength. The real goal is not to win the most. It's to lose the least when the world turns upside down. Imagine a situation. You raise pre-flop with aces, get one caller, and see a flop of Jack 10-8 with two suits. It's a dangerous board, but not hopeless. You bet once and get called. The turn brings a 9. Now straights are complete, and two flush draws exist. This is where pot control matters most. Betting again feels tempting. The voice in your mind says you must protect your hand, but protection by force often leads to punishment. Checking here shifts the weight back onto your opponent. You give them a chance to reveal themselves. If they bet small, you can call. If they bet large, you can reevaluate. Either way, you preserved clarity. The strength of aces lies not in domination but in their consistency. They win often, but they don't need to win big to stay profitable. Pot control recognizes this truth. It turns the game into a steady rhythm instead of an emotional roller coaster. Every calm fold, every cautious check, every well-sized bet becomes part of that rhythm, a kind of meditation in motion. You're not afraid of variance, you're simply respecting it. Position adds another layer to this balance. In position, pot control feels like a smooth dance. You can check back flops, control the turn's tempo, and apply measured pressure on the river. Out of position, it becomes more defensive. You bet smaller, react to aggression, and let the hand unfold without overextending. In both cases, awareness of stack sizes, opponent tendencies, and board texture keeps you grounded. Pot control is not about playing small, it's about playing smart. In live poker, you'll often sense when a pot is swelling too quickly. You'll see opponents growing restless, their eyes sharp with curiosity or greed. That's when restraint becomes your advantage. Let them mistake your calm for hesitation. Let them believe they can push you off your hand. Every time you control the pace, you control the narrative. Online, the same principle lives in timing and sizing. Smooth, consistent play disarms even the most aggressive opponents. Emotionally, pot control requires humility. It asks you to accept that aces are still just one pair, no matter how they look in your hand. Pride wants to build the biggest pots. Wisdom wants to build the right ones. Each small pot you manage successfully builds long-term confidence. You stop fearing variance because you no longer hand it control of your emotions. Your strategy remains steady, your heart rate even. The cards no longer dictate your state of mind. When you practice pot control, you begin to see poker differently. The game slows down. Hands feel quieter, cleaner, more deliberate. You stop chasing explosions and start valuing precision. Aces become less about excitement and more about balance. Not a moment of triumph, but a chance to practice calm decision-making. Think of the pot as a mirror. Its size reflects the size of your emotions. The steadier your heart, the smaller the waves in that reflection. Each time you resist the urge to inflate, you reinforce the discipline that separates the great from the hopeful. Pot control is not the art of playing small, it's the art of playing clear. When you finish a session where your aces never won a massive pot, but also never cost you one, that's victory. Quiet, steady, mature victory. Because the truest measure of a strong player is not how high they rise in a single hand, but how calm they remain when the table tests their balance. Chapter 18. Turning Aces into a Bluff Catcher. There will come a time when your aces no longer feel like aces. The flop has connected too well for your opponent's range. The turn has darkened with draws, and the river brings tension instead of clarity. The hand that began as power now feels like survival. This is where most players panic. They can't let go of the image of dominance they had before the flop. But the great players adapt. They shift perspective. They understand that pocket aces, when played with awareness, can evolve from a hand of strength into a hand of stillness, a bluff catcher. This chapter teaches that transformation, how to release control, listen to the rhythm of the board, and let your opponent write the final line. To turn aces into a bluff catcher, you must first recognize when your role in the hand has changed. There's a clear difference between a hand that demands aggression and one that requires calm defense. This transition often begins when multiple bets go into the pot on boards that favor your opponent's range, connected textures, paired boards, or ones heavy with completed draws. You're no longer protecting, you're surviving with purpose. The strength of your hand remains, but its job shifts from dominance to observation. The emotional challenge is acceptance. Letting go of the idea that you should win big with aces, frees you to make better decisions. When the board is scary, your goal is no longer to extract, it's to contain. Containment means guiding the hand to a manageable ending, keeping the pot small enough that even a loss feels light. It means trusting your read rather than forcing control through large bets. The moment you stop trying to prove that aces must win, you start playing poker with real clarity. Imagine the river on a dangerous board. The flush completes, the straight fills in, and your opponent suddenly bets large. Many players crumble here. They fold too quickly, surrendering to fear, or they call reflexively out of pride. The calm player pauses. They remember the story. Did this opponent represent the draw earlier in the hand? Did they bet consistently across streets, or is this sudden aggression out of rhythm? A bluff catcher doesn't need to win often, just often enough to make calling profitable. The question is not, do I have the best hand, but does their story make sense? When you hold aces on a board like King, Queen, Jack, 5, 10, your hand is technically strong but practically fragile. Everything around it has improved. Straights, two pairs, sets. Yet the story your opponent tells still matters. Some players bet simply because they sense your hesitation. They're attacking your fear. Recognizing that pattern gives you the courage to call when the evidence supports it. Others only bet when they truly have it. Your memory of their behavior becomes your map. Bluff catching is not guesswork. It's applied observation. Position once again shapes everything. In position, you can allow the action to unfold before you decide. A small bet might reveal weakness. A large one might reveal confidence or desperation. Out of position, your decision becomes purer, based solely on the opponent's history and the texture of the board. The key is to remain emotionally neutral. You are not attached to the outcome, only to the process of logical decision-making. The calmer your heart, the clearer the truth becomes. Turning aces into a bluff catcher also requires understanding bet sizing from your opponent's perspective. A small bet on the river after missed draws might be a value attempt from a medium-strength hand. A large polarized shove might represent the extremes, the nuts or nothing. Against aggressive players, these large bets often skew toward bluffs. Against careful, tight players, they lean toward value. The only way to know the difference is through consistent observation across hands. Every showdown you witness adds a page to your mental library, and that library is what keeps your aces safe in moments of uncertainty. In live play, the clues are physical. The player who suddenly stiffens may be holding breath, not strength. The one who speaks after betting often seeks validation. When someone bets big but looks away immediately, they might be hiding nerves, not power. Online, you rely on timing and rhythm, the pause before a shove, the quick click of a continuation bet. None of these signals are perfect, but together they form intuition. Bluff catching with aces is not about being psychic. It's about being present. The deeper lesson behind turning aces into a bluff catcher is humility. You are no longer commanding the hand, you are listening to it. You allow the opponent to tell their story, and you wait patiently to see if it aligns with logic. Sometimes the right decision is to call calmly and watch them show the missed draw. Other times, it's to fold and preserve your balance for the next opportunity. Both outcomes carry wisdom. You didn't chase emotion, you followed reason. Mathematically, even when you call and lose, the act of calling in the right frequencies keeps your strategy balanced. Opponents who realize you can call down light will bluff less against you in the future. You create a quiet shield, not through fear, but through consistency. Every disciplined call builds long-term credibility. Every reckless fold invites future exploitation. The discipline to bluff catch correctly is an invisible weapon that protects you over thousands of hands. Pocket aces remind you that poker is not a game of certainty, but of weighted probabilities. Even when the board turns dark and the pot grows heavy, your calm observation keeps you grounded. The moment you shift from "I must win" to "I must listen," the game slows down. You see the rhythm beneath the aggression, the meaning behind the motion. You're no longer reacting to fear, you're responding to truth. So when the river comes, and your opponent leans forward with one last push, breathe before you decide. Hear the story, weigh the math, and let the answer come from stillness, not from pride. Sometimes you'll be right, sometimes wrong, but both outcomes carry growth. Because every time you turn aces into a bluff catcher with patience instead of panic, you step closer to the heart of poker itself, the art of remaining calm in a world built on chaos. Chapter 19: The River Decision. The river is where poker slows into silence. The final card has been dealt. All the possibilities have converged into one fixed story, and it's time to listen carefully to what it says. For players holding pocket aces, this moment is often more emotional than logical, a crossroads between hope and discipline. You've carried the hand across 3 streets, surviving the tension of each turn, and now the river demands clarity. This chapter is about that final decision: when to value bet, when to check, when to call, and when to fold. It's about learning to end a hand with peace rather than noise. The river feels heavy because it's final. There are no more cards to come, no more hidden variables to imagine. You're no longer planning, you're concluding. But the stillness of this stage can be deceptive. Many players let fatigue or attachment take over here. They've invested time, thought, and emotion into the hand, and now they want closure. The danger is that this desire for resolution overrides patience. The best players, however, approach the river the same way they approach the preflop: calm, analytical, and unhurried. They do not let the story's ending dictate their tone. When holding aces, the first question on the river is always, what changed? Every new card shifts the story's truth slightly. Did the final card complete a draw? Pair the board? Bring another overcard that could empower your opponent's range? These questions guide your thought process. The river is about recognition, acknowledging that your hand, while strong, may no longer be ahead. If the texture favors your opponent, humility becomes your ally. You can check, control the pot, and allow them to speak first. When the board remains neutral, quiet confidence allows you to extract the final layer of value. Bet sizing becomes delicate here. Large bets polarize your opponent's decisions. They either fold weak hands or call with monsters. Smaller bets invite curiosity. When you're unsure where you stand, a small bet accomplishes both goals. It gathers value from second-best hands and protects against large, aggressive bluffs. There's beauty in restraint. The most skilled players learn that profit doesn't always come from pressure. Sometimes it comes from gentleness. When facing a bet, the river transforms into a test of memory. You replay the hand like a film in slow motion. Every action, every hesitation, every pattern of behavior. Has your opponent been consistent with their story? Did their bets across earlier streets fit the narrative they're telling now? Most bluffs unravel in the details. The sizing changes, the rhythm stutters, the tone shifts. Real value hands move with calm consistency. Learning to spot that difference is the quiet craft that defines a professional. Sometimes, calling is the correct path. You've seen your opponent play too fast, too emotional, too eager to bluff missed draws. Other times, folding is the best decision you can make, the kind that doesn't feel satisfying in the moment, but saves you far more over time. Folding aces on the river may sound painful, but it's one of the most mature acts in poker. You are not surrendering, you are preserving balance. You are trusting that long-term clarity matters more than short-term validation. River decisions are often more emotional than strategic because of what they represent, the conclusion of tension. That's why it's vital to stay grounded in logic. Before acting, take one slow breath. Separate the story of the hand from the story in your mind. You are not proving your strength, nor redeeming earlier mistakes. You are simply making one decision, one small, quiet choice in a long sequence of choices. The river doesn't define you, your process does. Position still matters deeply here. Acting last allows you to control how the story ends. You can check behind to keep the pot manageable, or make a value bet that feels effortless, one your opponent can't resist calling. Acting first, by contrast, requires intuition. You must decide whether your opponent will turn their missed draws into bluffs or give up entirely. Every river decision is a negotiation between logic and emotion. The calmer you are, the clearer the truth becomes. In live poker, the river has its own gravity. The chips sound heavier. The table grows quieter. Eyes lock and stay still. In those moments, your breathing is your greatest ally. The steadier it is, the less information you give away. Online, that silence becomes timing. How long you take before your final action. Whether in person or behind a screen, your composure becomes your edge. The most important part of the river decision isn't what you choose, it's how you choose it. A clear, measured fold teaches confidence just as much as a profitable call. A thin value bet that gets paid reminds you that discipline creates opportunity. Every decision made from stillness strengthens your foundation as a player. When the session ends and the noise of chips fades, what remains is that calm, the knowledge that you made each choice with intention, not reaction. Pocket aces on the river are a meditation on control. Sometimes you close the story with a steady value bet. Sometimes you end it quietly with a fold. Either way, the lesson is the same. Victory in poker is not defined by who wins the pot, but by who keeps their peace. The hand that began with excitement ends with reflection. Not a burst of triumph, but a soft reminder that every strong hand, like every strong player, must know how to finish with grace. Chapter 20. Avoiding Fancy Play Syndrome. There is a quiet trap that catches even confident players. It is the desire to be clever. Pocket aces are the spark that often lights it. You look down at them, feel the rush of excitement, and think to yourself, I can play this differently. I can make it special. That is where fancy play syndrome begins. It does not start as arrogance. It begins as creativity mixed with pride. You want to outsmart your opponents, to design a trap so perfect that they never see it coming. But pocket aces do not need tricks. They need structure, clarity, and calm execution. The truth is simple. The strength of aces is already complete. They do not need to be hidden behind deception. When you start to disguise them too much, you strip away the very simplicity that makes them powerful. Fancy plays often turn strong hands into fragile ones, not because of the cards but because of the choices. Imagine you are in early position with pocket aces. Instead of raising, you decide to limp. You tell yourself it is deception, that you will re-raise later and surprise everyone. 5 players call behind you. The flop comes out 9, 10, and Jack. Suddenly your perfect hand is surrounded by danger. Straight draws, 2 pairs, and connected cards are everywhere. You check, one player bets, another raises. The pot grows fast, and your comfort fades. The clever plan becomes a problem. Fancy play syndrome just turned power into panic. The best players in the world do not make that mistake. They play aces directly, with confidence, but without vanity. They raise the way they always raise. They size their bets with reason, not emotion. They do not care about impressing the table or looking mysterious. When you play aces in that clear, steady way, every decision becomes easier. You control the hand rather than chase it. Slow playing aces rarely earns extra value. It feels tempting to trap an opponent, but in most cases, the trap collapses. Players check behind on flops, scared of danger. The pot stays small, and the moment passes. The irony of fancy play syndrome is that it often costs you the profit you hope to create. When you try too hard to be unpredictable, you end up removing the very mistakes that would have paid you naturally. Fancy play also feeds the ego. You picture yourself showing the hand at the end, hearing admiration from others, maybe even a few compliments. But poker does not reward admiration. It rewards accuracy. Every unnecessary limp, every awkward slow play is a small declaration that pride has taken over, discipline. The calm player has nothing to prove. They make the right decision quietly, not to show brilliance, but to maintain balance. Pocket aces win by letting the game unfold through logic, not flair. The steady line of raise, continuation bet, and value extraction is not boring. It is powerful because it repeats without emotional interference. Over time, that rhythm becomes your advantage. You no longer rely on luck or cleverness. You rely on structure. Picture the same hand again, but this time you play it properly. You raise 4 times the big blind. 2 players call. The flop comes king, 7, and 2. You make a small continuation bet. One opponent folds, the other calls. The turn brings a 9. You bet again, calm and measured. They fold. The pot slides to you quietly. No drama, no chaos, just clean profit. That is what discipline looks like in motion. Fancy play syndrome also appears when you are deep stacked and feel the urge to make aces look suspicious. Maybe you check a safe flop to mix it up, or make a huge overbet to appear weak. But these moves usually backfire. They confuse your opponents just enough to make them fold when you wanted them to call, or call when you wanted to control the pot. Simplicity protects your profit. It allows opponents to make mistakes without your interference. Psychologically, fancy play syndrome is the voice of insecurity, pretending to be confidence. It whispers that predictability is weakness, that simple play is uncreative. But discipline is not dull. It is refined. Every great player built success on fundamentals, so solid they appear effortless. When you play aces cleanly, you are not being uncreative. You are being precise. The cure for fancy play syndrome is awareness. Before every hand, especially with aces, pause and ask yourself, am I making this move because it is correct or because it feels clever? If the answer leans toward clever, stop. Return to clarity. Poker does not remember your creative traps. It remembers your results. In live poker, fancy play syndrome shows up all the time. The player who slow rolls strength, the one who limps monsters, the one who wants attention more than chips. Over time, you learn to see through the performance. True creativity in poker is restraint. The art lies in doing the right thing at the right time without spectacle. So the next time you look down at pocket aces and feel the temptation to do something unusual, take a calm breath. Let the hand play itself. Raise clearly. Bet cleanly. Extract value slowly and steadily. The game does not need cleverness, it needs clarity. Aces are not a stage for display, they are a test of discipline. And in truth, the most creative thing you can ever do with aces is to play them exactly right. Chapter 21. Emotional Control After a Loss. Every poker player remembers the sting of losing with pocket aces. You played correctly, you bet confidently, and still the river turned against you. The pot slides away, and a quiet heat rises inside. Disbelief, frustration, and the heavy question. Why did this happen? This chapter exists for that moment. Because how you handle losing with aces says more about your long-term success than how you handle winning with them. Poker doesn't measure greatness by control over the cards, but by control over the self. When aces lose, it feels personal. You started with perfection, the mathematical favorite, the moment every player waits for, and still it slipped away. But this is the paradox of poker. You can do everything right and still lose, or play badly and win for a while. The cards don't reward correctness in the short term. They reward discipline over thousands of hands. Emotional control after a loss isn't about pretending not to care. It's about understanding that variance is not betrayal. It's the fabric of the game itself. The first step is to let the hand end. Many players replay the loss in their mind before the next deal, the board, the turn, the sound of chips moving away. They carry the echo of that pain into the next hand, and it poisons their clarity. The moment you notice that spiral beginning, stop. Fold a hand if you must. Take a breath. Feel the stillness return before acting again. Your emotional recovery time defines your edge. The faster you regain balance, the longer your edge lasts. Loss with aces often triggers something deeper than disappointment. It shakes the illusion of control. You did everything right, and it still went wrong, so the mind rebels. It searches for justice in a game built on probability. But poker is not moral, it's mathematical. There's no fairness, only frequency. Understanding that truth doesn't make the loss easier, it makes it lighter. You stop needing the game to be kind, you only need it to be consistent. The worst reaction to losing with aces is revenge. Players chase the pain by forcing action in the next few hands, trying to get it back. That emotional fire feels powerful, but it burns your logic. You start 3-betting hands you shouldn't, calling out of pride, betting too large just to feel in control again. In those moments, the opponent across from you isn't the one taking your chips, your emotions are. Tilt isn't just anger, it's ego losing patience. The cure is rhythm. Take your time, Breathe through the next few hands and remind yourself, poker is not about this pot. It's about the next 1,000. Some professionals even create rituals for emotional reset. They straighten their chips. They sip water. They look away from the table for 10 seconds and come back as if the session just began. These small gestures tell the body and mind, we're still calm. The game continues. Whether live or online, you can do the same. Build habits that recenter you, not as distractions, but as reminders that emotion is a passing visitor, not a permanent resident. There's also beauty in acceptance. Losing with aces is part of the statistical rhythm that makes the game sustainable. If aces always won, no one would play. The illusion of possibility keeps weaker hands engaged and keeps the game alive. Every time your aces lose, they're doing their part to sustain the ecosystem that will one day pay you back. Long term, the math balances. The question is whether you'll be calm enough to stay in your seat when it does. Over time, emotional control becomes muscle memory. The first few times you lose a massive pot, the shock hits hard. But each repetition teaches you something. That variance doesn't define you, that bad beats are temporary, and that composure is a skill you can practice like any other. You learn to separate pain from panic. Pain is natural, it passes. Panic is optional, it costs money. In live poker, your reaction to losing with aces becomes part of your table image. Opponents watch closely, looking for cracks in your composure. If you sigh, shake your head, or mutter under your breath, they sense opportunity. If you stay still, quiet, and unbothered, they hesitate next time. Emotional control isn't just for your inner peace, it's part of your external defense. Online, where your face is hidden, it still matters through timing. Snap decisions after a loss often lead to tilt plays. Slowing down for 1 or 2 extra beats resets your rhythm. You can even turn the loss into a lesson. Ask yourself, did I play the hand correctly? Did I manage pot size, position, and emotion with balance? If the answer is yes, then the result is irrelevant. You succeeded. You made a good decision. That's the foundation of all long-term profit. The pot that got away is just noise against a lifetime of consistency. If you find a mistake, note it without judgment. Awareness is enough, guilt adds nothing. Eventually you'll realize that losing with aces is not a failure, it's a reminder. A reminder that poker is a mirror of life. Control is limited, emotion is fleeting, and peace comes not from winning, but from playing well. Every bad beat becomes a small meditation on patience. You breathe, you let it pass, and you return to stillness. That's not weakness, it's mastery. When you sit at the table again after losing with aces, feel the chips in your hand, hear the soft shuffle of cards, and let that sound wash away the past. The game doesn't remember what just happened. It only knows this hand, this moment. If you can meet it with calmness, not bitterness, you've already won. Because emotional control isn't just about surviving losses, it's about finding peace inside them. Chapter 22. Recognizing tilt in others. Poker is not only about the cards in front of you. It is about the people sitting around you, and how they respond to those cards. Every player carries emotion beneath the surface, and when that emotion spills out, it shapes the game more than any flop or turn. Tilt is what happens when emotion takes control. Recognizing it early gives you power without needing to be aggressive. It allows you to use your calm like a mirror, letting other players reveal themselves while you remain still. Pocket aces often cause tilt in others. When you win a big pot with them, watch carefully. The player who lost is no longer neutral. They may smile politely, but their next few decisions will speak louder than their expression. Maybe they call too quickly, or bet larger than usual. Maybe they start talking more, trying to disguise frustration. Tilt is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like eagerness, sometimes like quiet fury. Either way, it always changes rhythm, and rhythm is what you must learn to read. Imagine this scene. You win a large hand with aces against a player who shoved pre-flop with kings. The pot is huge, and they sit in silence afterward. For 2 orbits they fold every hand, then suddenly raise with a weak holding, trying to take back what they lost. That shift is tilt, taking form. You do not have to exploit it with aggression. You only need to wait. Tilted players defeat themselves when given time. Your calm presence becomes the trap they walk into. Tilt comes in many forms. There is revenge tilt, where a player targets the one who hurt them. There is desperation tilt, where they try to win everything back quickly. There is boredom tilt, where frustration with a slow game pushes them into reckless play. Each type shows through behavior. Revenge tilt focuses on you specifically. Desperation tilt plays every hand too strongly. Boredom tilt shows through careless calls and exaggerated chatter. When you hold aces after someone has tilted, you must resist the temptation to chase them. Let the hand come naturally. A tilted player will often overcommit against you on their own. They feel a need to prove something, to reclaim respect. If you bet too heavily too soon, you might scare them away. Let their emotion work for you. Bet small, steady, and confident. When they strike, you already know why. In live poker, tilt reveals itself physically. Watch the small details. A player who slams chips, shuffles cards aggressively, or sighs heavily between hands is broadcasting frustration. Their breathing changes, their posture tightens, their body shifts toward the felt, as if willing the cards to obey. Others tilt inward, becoming quiet and still, their gaze locked on the board too long. In both cases, the same truth applies. Their decisions are no longer balanced. Emotion has replaced logic, and emotion is predictable once you learn to see it. Online, tilt hides behind timing. A player who suddenly acts faster or slower than usual, who overbets on harmless flops or shoves into strong ranges, is showing emotional disruption. Watch how their rhythm changes after losing a pot. Do they start 3-betting every hand? Do they chase draws with reckless abandon? Those are your signals. Patience is your response. It is important to stay detached from judgment. Recognizing tilt is not about mocking others or feeling superior. It is about understanding human rhythm. Everyone tilts, even you. The difference between good and great players is how quickly they recover. When you stay neutral, you become the calm center that others spin around. Their energy rises and falls, but you remain steady, collecting quiet edges. Pocket aces have a unique way of exposing tilt because they bring out envy and emotion in others. People hate losing to them. They remember the pain and want to erase it. You will see it especially in small stakes games, where emotion sits closer to the surface. After you show down aces, expect the next few hands to carry tension. Use that awareness to protect yourself. Play measuredly. Allow the table to reset. Tilt also appears after you fold aces. Maybe someone bluffs you and shows it. That moment can tilt both of you. They feel proud. You feel stung. But watch what happens next. The proud player often overplays their next hand, still basking in the feeling of triumph. Their rhythm quickens. That is your opening. Tilt is not only anger, it is any emotion strong enough to pull a player away from calm. The best way to exploit tilt is with patience, not force. Tilted players create mistakes naturally. They call when they should fold, or shove when they should think. If you push too hard, you become emotional too. Instead, slow down. Let the tilted player burn through their own energy, while you preserve yours. Each mistake they make is one less you need to create. Recognizing tilt is also about empathy. When you see someone unravel, remind yourself that you have felt the same way. That understanding keeps your ego quiet. You are not hunting them, you are observing them. Poker punishes cruelty, just as it punishes pride. Calmness wins, because it is sustainable. Over time, you will begin to feel tilt before you see it. The air at the table changes. The tempo shifts. You sense impatience growing. That is the moment to become even slower, even steadier. Tilt cannot hurt a player who refuses to join it. Pocket aces give you opportunities to witness emotion in its rawest form. Every time you win with them, you'll see reactions, denial, frustration, stubbornness. Every time you lose with them, you'll feel those same things yourself. The lesson is balance. Learn from both sides. Tilt is the opposite of peace, and poker is a game that rewards peace. When others tilt, let them. Keep your breathing slow, your decisions measured, your awareness open. The more chaos surrounds you, the more valuable calm becomes. Because in the end, recognizing tilt is not about identifying weakness in others. It is about protecting stillness within yourself. Chapter 23: Adjusting to Table Dynamics. Every poker table has a personality. It shifts with the people who sit there, the mood of the session, and the way chips begin to move. Some tables play tight and cautious, others loose and wild. The energy changes from hour to hour, and the best players adapt quietly. When you hold pocket aces, those shifting dynamics shape everything. Your job is not to fight the table's rhythm, but to move with it, using awareness instead of force. At a tight table, where players fold often and show respect for raises, your aces should be played for quiet control. You do not need to build large pots quickly. Value comes naturally, because opponents will only continue with strong hands. Raise your usual amount, and if you face resistance, keep the pot smaller until the board feels safe. You are already ahead. There is no need to prove it. Patience is profit in tight games. At a loose table, the opposite is true. Players chase every flop and call with anything that looks interesting. Here, aces gain value from simplicity and aggression. You can raise larger pre-flop to thin the field, but you must also accept that you will be called often. Looseness rewards discipline. Your focus shifts from fear of bad beats to extraction of mistakes. When 3 or 4 players call your raise, do not panic. the math still favors you. Bet steadily and let their curiosity pay you over time. Table dynamics are not just about how people play, they are about how they feel. After a big hand, energy changes. Maybe someone is steaming from a loss. Maybe another player has built a mountain of chips and is feeling invincible. Your aces exist inside that emotional weather. Learn to sense when the table is calm and when it is electric. Calm tables reward patience. Electric tables reward structure. Imagine sitting in a cash game where the last 3 hands ended in large confrontations. The air is tense. Players are eager to win something back. Now you pick up pocket aces. If you raise the same way you always do, half the table may shove on impulse. That is not luck, it is psychology. Understanding that rhythm gives you clarity. You do not need to slow play or act differently. You just need to recognize that your hand has more potential value right now, because the room is running hot. In tournaments, table dynamics shift even faster. Stack sizes, blind levels, and survival pressure change behavior every few minutes. With aces, your strategy must adapt to that tempo. Against short stacks, play clean and decisive. Against deep stacks, play controlled and thoughtful. Against chip leaders who bully, allow them to bet into you. Against cautious players on the bubble, extract value with smaller bets that feel safe to call. The table tells you what to do if you listen long enough. Every table also has leaders. These are the players who shape the mood. They talk the most, act the fastest, and make the biggest pots. Watch them closely. When you hold aces, you can use their influence to your advantage. If a dominant player raises before you, a calm re-raise sends a message of strength that echoes through the table. If a quiet player suddenly opens aggressively, your aces become a test of their confidence. By understanding who drives the tempo, you choose the right moments to apply pressure. Live Poker offers subtle signals about table dynamics. The noise level, the laughter, the pace of chip movement, all of these reflect energy. When the table grows quiet and serious, you know people are tense and conservative. When conversation is lively and hands are being shown after every pot, people are relaxed and curious. Adjust your aces accordingly. In quiet moments, smaller bets build trust. In loud moments, larger bets get called. Online poker hides those social cues, but the data still tells the story. Watch how often pots go to showdown, how frequently players 3-bet, and how long each decision takes. Those numbers reveal pace and emotion just as clearly as facial expressions. When the table is passive, you can take control with confidence. When the table turns aggressive, tighten slightly and let others burn energy while you wait for perfect timing. Pocket aces also change table dynamics the moment you show them. If you reveal aces after a big win, players may treat you differently for the next hour. Some will avoid you, others will target you. Both reactions are useful. When players become afraid, you can bluff more freely. When they become emotional, you can value bet more thinly. The key is awareness. Aces not only win pots, they reshape perception. The heart of adapting lies in observation. Before every hand, take one slow look around. Notice who is stacking chips, who is staring at the board, who is leaning back. These details tell you whether the table is contracting or expanding, whether tension is rising or fading. Then let your aces fit the current mood rather than fighting against it. In truth, table dynamics are the living pulse of poker. They are what turn a mechanical game into an art form. When you play pocket aces with awareness of that pulse, you stop relying on hope and start relying on rhythm. Each hand becomes a quiet conversation. Some tables whisper, some roar. You listen, adjust, and stay calm through both. The cards may be the same, but the world around them never is. And the player who learns to adjust without losing their stillness is the one who wins not through luck, but through harmony with the table itself. Chapter 24. Reading Bet Sizing. Every action in poker has a tone. Even before a word is spoken, before a glance or a sigh, a bet size tells a story. It is the language of intent, written in chips. Understanding that language separates players who guess from players who see. When you hold pocket aces, reading bet sizing gives you clarity in moments when emotion might otherwise cloud judgment. This chapter explores how to interpret those silent messages and how to use them to protect and grow the strength of your hand. Bet sizing is never random. Every player, consciously or not, reveals emotion through how much they risk. Small bets tend to say, "I want you to call." Large bets say, "I want you to fold." Between those two lies a world of uncertainty, fear, and hope. When you learn to hear these meanings calmly, you stop reacting and start understanding. Pocket aces make that process easier because they give you confidence to observe without panic. You can take your time to listen. Before the flop, bet sizing often shows comfort level. A player who raises the same amount every hand is structured. A player who suddenly makes an unusually large raise is uncertain or emotional. Perhaps they fear losing with a strong hand like kings or queens. When you hold aces, this knowledge helps you adjust smoothly. Against smaller raises, you can trap value. Against large raises, you can isolate. You no longer act from instinct alone. You respond to tone. After the flop, the meaning of sizing deepens. A small continuation bet, perhaps 1/3 of the pot, usually says, "I am testing the waters." It is a probe rather than a commitment. Medium bets show hesitation wrapped in confidence, an attempt to look strong without full certainty. Large bets, often more than 2/3 of the pot, tend to polarize. They usually represent either a very strong hand or a bluff. The board texture will tell you which. On dry boards like King 7-2, large bets often lean toward bluffing. On wet boards like 10 Jack Queen, with 2 suits, large bets often mean protection from draws. When you face aggression, pause and listen to what the size communicates. If someone bets small into a large pot, they may be seeking safety. They want to end the hand quietly. If they overbet suddenly, they may be trying to hide nerves behind force. The beauty of aces is that you can stay still long enough to notice. You do not need to rush. The hand gives you permission to breathe. Bet sizing also changes with emotion. A confident player bets evenly and without hesitation. A nervous player rushes their chips or counts them twice before committing. Online, emotion shows through patterns. A player who normally bets half the pot, but suddenly bets full pot, has shifted state. You do not have to label it instantly. Simply note it. Every small change adds to the picture. Your own sizing should remain balanced. With aces, the temptation is to protect them by betting larger than usual. But this often scares away value. Use the same sizes you would use with other strong hands. Consistency makes you unreadable. When others cannot link your bet size to your hand strength, they are forced to guess, and that guess is where your profit lives. Reading sizing is not about memorizing patterns. It is about empathy. You must think as they think. Ask yourself quietly, if I were in their seat, would I bet this much with a bluff? Would I risk this much with a draw? The more you practice this reflection, the faster the meaning of each bet becomes clear. Over time, the numbers begin to sound like tones in music. You feel when something is off. Pocket aces make this awareness powerful because they remove fear. When your hand is strong, you can afford to listen. You no longer chase information, you receive it. On dangerous boards, use sizing clues to decide whether to slow down. On dry boards, use them to build value safely. The numbers on the felt become a translation of human thought. Live poker gives physical context to sizing. Watch how players move chips. Smooth motions signal comfort. Clumsy ones reveal tension. When someone bets confidently but avoids eye contact, it often means strength. When they stare at you too long, it often means weakness disguised as courage. Online, those physical cues become timing tells and frequency trends, but the principle stays the same. Every action expresses intention. As you become fluent in bet sizing, your mind grows quieter. You stop fixating on luck and start listening for rhythm. The same way a musician can sense the next note, you begin to sense the next move. You understand why a player bets small on one street and large on the next. The story unfolds naturally, and you learn to respond rather than react. With pocket aces, reading bet sizing transforms fear into understanding. You see through bluffs and protect yourself from danger without aggression. When someone bets small, you know how to extract. When they bet big, you know when to let go. The decisions remain logical, not emotional. Over time, this awareness changes how you experience poker. The table stops feeling like chaos. Every bet, every chip, every sound becomes part of a pattern you can read. Aces become your teacher in this process. They remind you that listening is often more powerful than acting. Because in poker, as in life, the size of what someone risks always tells you the truth about what they fear. Chapter 25. Adjusting to stack sizes. Every poker hand exists inside a quiet balance of power. That balance is measured, not only by cards, but by how many chips each player has behind. Stack size changes everything about how pocket aces should be played. The same hand that feels invincible with deep stacks can require caution when short. Understanding how to adjust your strategy to different stack depths is one of the most important lessons aces can teach you. Stack size defines freedom. Deep stacks create space to think, bluff, and maneuver. Short stacks compress the game into simple, decisive moments. Aces remain the strongest starting hand in both situations, but the way you guide them must change. The goal is not to memorize fixed rules, but to sense proportion. You must understand how your choices scale with the number of chips in play. When stacks are short, meaning around 20 to 30 times the big blind, aces are straightforward. You do not need deception or elaborate plans. You simply aim to move your chips in with the best hand, and let probability do the rest. Fancy lines only create unnecessary risk. At short depth, aces should be played cleanly and directly. Raise for value, re-raise when pressured, and call off when appropriate. There is no need to slow play, because there is no room to recover from mistakes. Your advantage lies in simplicity. Still, even in short stack situations, calm execution matters. Many players panic when they see aces, pushing all in too quickly, or revealing excitement through their timing. A composed player treats aces the same way every time. They make clear, deliberate actions. The steadiness itself hides strength. When your rhythm stays neutral, your opponents cannot sense urgency. In short stack play, patience and tempo win more chips than aggression alone. When stacks are medium, usually between 30 and 80 times the big blind, aces become more nuanced. You have room to plan, but not enough to overcomplicate. At this depth, your main focus is pot control and value extraction. Aces are still dominant, but they can lose large pots if you inflate them carelessly. Your strategy becomes one of balance. Build value pre-flop, continue betting through safe boards, and slow down when texture or resistance demands caution. For example, with 50 big blinds effective, you raise with aces and get one caller. The flop comes queen 10 and 7. You bet half the pot. The opponent calls. The turn brings a jack. Suddenly, the board is heavy with straights. This is where discipline matters. You do not have to win every large pot with aces. Sometimes, the correct play is to slow down, protect your stack, and preserve long-term profit. Aces teach that wisdom through experience. When stacks are deep, over 100 times the big blind, aces can feel both powerful and dangerous. Deep stacks create complex decisions across multiple streets. You must now consider implied odds, player tendencies, and future pressure. The hand that dominates pre-flop can face trouble on coordinated boards when large bets begin to fly. With aces, deep play means managing pot size without fear or greed. Deep stacked opponents can chase draws, float flops, or apply pressure with semi-bluffs. Your response must be steady. Bet for value, but avoid building massive pots without reason. The deeper the money, the more important patience becomes. Aces should not be turned into oversized pots just because they look beautiful. Think of deep play as navigation through fog. You cannot see far ahead, but you move smoothly and deliberately until clarity returns. Stack size also influences how others react to your aces. Short-stacked players may shove all in with weaker holdings, hoping for luck. Deep-stacked players may try to outplay you post-flop. Adjust your tone accordingly. Against short stacks, your calm confidence forces mistakes. Against deep ones, your measured restraint builds trust until they overcommit. The goal is to align your behavior with their comfort zone, then let the math favor you. Live poker makes these differences visible. You can feel tension in short stacks, see excitement in medium ones, and sense confidence in deep ones. Each environment calls for a different energy. Short stacks require decisiveness. Medium stacks reward patience. Deep stacks demand humility. Recognizing that rhythm helps you stay centered, no matter what sits in front of you. Online, stack sizes are right there on the screen. Use that information. Know how many blinds each opponent has before the hand begins. Treat it as context for every decision. If a short-stacked player re-raises, expect commitment. If a deep player calls, prepare for a longer story. When you adapt before the first card hits the board, your aces stay under control. Emotionally, stack size also affects pressure. When you have a large stack, it is easy to feel invincible. When you are short, every hand feels critical. Aces remind you to keep the same composure in both states. The cards do not care about your chip count. They respond only to decisions. Stay consistent, and variance evens out. The philosophy of aces and stack sizes is simple. Let the environment decide your rhythm, but never your calm. When the chips are shallow, play directly. When they are deep, play thoughtfully. Do not let greed or fear change your structure. Because aces are not just a strong hand. They are a measure of your ability to adapt. The player who adjusts their decisions to the moment, without losing balance, is the one who turns power into precision. Chapter 26. Maintaining focus in long sessions. Poker is a test of endurance, as much as skill. The game rewards the player who can stay calm and aware through hours of repetition, emotion, and uncertainty. Aces come and go, pots rise and fall, but the quality of your decisions depends on your ability to stay present. Pocket aces, in particular, reveal how fragile focus can be. You might play them perfectly at the start of a session, only to misplay them later after fatigue or frustration sets in. To handle long sessions well, you must learn how to protect your attention and your emotional energy. Focus does not mean straining every second. It means staying gently aware. The danger in poker is not distraction, but drift. You stop paying attention without realizing it. You start folding hands mechanically, calling without thinking, or raising just because it feels like time to act. Then, when pocket aces appear, you are not fully awake. You misread a board or forget an opponent's pattern. A single lapse erases hours of good work. Focus is not intensity, it is steadiness. Long sessions wear the mind in subtle ways. The brain tires from decision fatigue. The longer you sit, the more each choice costs you mentally. Recognizing this, you must build small breaks into your rhythm. Step away from the table when you can. Stretch, breathe, or simply let your eyes rest from the lights. If you are playing online, take short pauses between sessions instead of chasing one long grind. When you return, the world sharpens again. Your awareness resets. Pocket aces offer a perfect example of what fatigue does. Early in a session, you handle them with clarity. You size your bets carefully, manage pot control, and stay composed even when a bad board appears. Hours later, with the same hand, you may bet too fast or misjudge an opponent's strength. The hand has not changed, only your concentration has. Aces expose the difference between being awake and being automatic. Nutrition and hydration matter more than most players admit. Low energy affects patience and logic. A tired brain seeks shortcuts. You may convince yourself to call when you know you should fold, or bluff when you are not truly reading the situation. Keeping steady blood sugar and hydration prevents that mental slip. Treat your mind like a quiet machine that must be maintained. Focus also comes from rhythm. Long sessions feel endless when you think of them as one continuous block. Instead, divide them into sections. Each hour becomes its own small game. You can even reset your intention before each one. Tell yourself, in this next hour, I will stay aware of bet sizing. Or, I will observe my breathing before every decision. These small goals anchor your attention without adding pressure. When you lose with aces late in a session, the mind is most vulnerable. Fatigue and frustration combine. You want to win it back, to fix the story before it ends. That urge is the enemy of focus. The real discipline lies in acceptance. Let the loss exist without resistance. If you keep your rhythm steady, the emotional wave will fade. You are not fighting tilt, you are waiting for it to dissolve. In live poker, focus is physical. It shows in posture, in stillness, in how you handle chips. A slouched body reflects a drifting mind. Sit upright. Keep movements calm and deliberate. Each small action reinforces awareness. Online focus is environmental. Keep your space clean, lighting soft, and distractions far from sight. Every decision begins with the environment you create. One of the best ways to sustain focus is to reconnect with curiosity. Instead of judging every hand by its result, become interested in what it reveals. Ask yourself questions during the session. Why did that player use that size? What could they be representing? Curiosity keeps the brain engaged without tension. You shift from forcing performance to enjoying observation. Pocket aces can be a tool for training awareness. Each time you receive them, notice your internal reaction. Does your heart rate rise? Does your pace quicken? Catch that moment, slow your breathing, and remind yourself that every hand deserves equal attention. Over time, this habit spreads to your entire game. You stop reacting to emotion and start moving through the session with evenness. The key is not to avoid fatigue, but to manage it. When you feel your concentration fade, acknowledge it. Take one slow breath. Reset your posture. Bring your attention back to the table, the cards, the rhythm of chips moving. The ability to return to focus quickly is more valuable than the ability to never lose it. By the final hours of a long session, small decisions matter most. Players around you grow careless. Their focus drifts into conversation or frustration. This is where calm awareness earns the most profit. When everyone else is tired, your steadiness becomes an edge. Pocket aces may appear again late in the night. You will play them the same way you did in the first hour, measured, focused, without emotion. That consistency is mastery. Poker's rhythm will always test your patience. But the player who learns to stay quietly attentive, even after hours of uncertainty, becomes stronger than any run of luck. Focus turns each hand into a moment of practice. Every card, every chip, becomes part of a larger meditation. And when you learn to carry that stillness from the first hand to the last, your pocket aces will always play themselves with perfect calm, not because the cards are strong, but because you are. Chapter 27. The Importance of Position with Aces. Position is poker's invisible edge, the quiet advantage that turns strong hands into reliable profit and weak ones into manageable losses. With pocket aces, it might feel unnecessary to think about position at all. After all, they're the best hand in the game. But true mastery means understanding that even aces are shaped by where you sit. This chapter explores why position amplifies your strength, how to use it without overplaying, and how awareness of order, who acts first and who acts last, becomes one of your greatest sources of calm and control. In poker, position is the order of truth. The later you act, the more information you hold. The earlier you act, the more faith you must have in what you cannot see. Aces thrive when they see clearly. They shrink when forced to act blind. That's why the same hand can feel effortless on the button and fragile under the gun. The difference isn't in the cards, it's in perspective. Early position is where discipline begins. Acting first means you are playing into unknown territory. With aces, you still raise, always, but your sizing and tone must be steady, not aggressive for its own sake. The danger in early position isn't losing with aces, it's building a pot you can't easily control later. Players behind you can re-raise or call with a wide range of hands, some of which connect well with future boards. Your task is to represent structure, a raise that invites respect, but doesn't announce overconfidence. Once the hand develops, play with caution. On dangerous boards, remember that the action will always flow back to you. You must decide before seeing anyone else's choice. That humility is your armor. Middle position adds a layer of rhythm. Here, you can see who's interested in the pot before you, and you still have several players behind. The key is adaptability. If the table is passive, you can open confidently. If it's aggressive, you can adjust your sizing slightly upward to protect against multiple callers. Aces here should be played not as traps, but as quiet anchors, hands that build the foundation for the table's perception of your range. The steadier your play, the harder it becomes for others to read you. Late position transforms aces into artistry. On the button or cutoff, you see nearly everything before acting. This vision gives you control over pot size, bluff frequency, and post-flop pressure. You can isolate weaker players, choose smaller bets to keep them engaged, or apply pressure to opponents already weakened by positional disadvantage. Late position with aces isn't about brute force, it's about balance, knowing when to extend the hand's power and when to let it breathe. Sometimes the best use of position is to slow the tempo, especially against emotional players who may trap themselves trying to fight back. Position also defines the flow of information after the flop. When you act last, your decisions become cleaner. You've seen everyone else's reaction, the pace of their bets, the tone of their checks. You're no longer guessing, you're responding. That clarity allows aces to maintain maximum value across multiple streets, without fear of being blindsided. Out of position, every decision carries more weight. You act in the dark, betting into uncertainty. That doesn't make aces weak. It simply means your margin for error is thinner. Awareness of that difference shapes your confidence. The best players use position not just to extract value, but to shape perception. By playing strong hands consistently, in early position, and balanced ones in late, you create a predictable rhythm that others misunderstand. They start believing your early raises mean strength, and your late raises mean weakness, until the roles reverse. Aces fit perfectly into that psychological weave. They allow you to write a story that keeps your opponents second-guessing while you remain calm and certain, underneath. Position also affects your emotional experience at the table. Acting last feels like breathing room. Acting first feels like tension. Recognize this and use it. Out of position, slow your pace deliberately. Breathe between actions. In position, guard against overconfidence. The comfort of acting last can turn into laziness if you stop paying attention. Awareness of how position affects your emotions is just as important as how it affects the math. In live play, position reveals itself through interaction. When you're last to act, you feel like the table's observer, a still point in a circle of motion. Use that energy to stay calm. Watch the physical rhythm of each player before you. Each hesitation, each quick call, gives context to the next decision. Online, position is less about presence and more about timing. You can feel its rhythm through action flow, the small delays that tell you how others are processing the hand. The position advantage exists there too, it's just quieter. Aces remind you that even the strongest hands prefer to see first. They teach that control in poker doesn't come from strength alone, but from patience, from waiting your turn to act with full awareness. When you're out of position, clarity comes from simplicity, smaller pots, tighter decisions, fewer bluffs. When you're in position, clarity comes from curiosity, asking what story the other players are telling, and responding precisely. Position is not a technical detail. It's the structure of calm decision-making. The player who understands position plays fewer hands, loses smaller pots, and wins more measured ones. Over thousands of hands, that quiet advantage compounds invisibly, turning patience into profit. Pocket aces don't make you invincible, position does. Acting last allows you to guide the story gently, to turn strong hands into steady earnings and weak spots into safe exits. Acting first teaches humility, discipline, and respect for uncertainty. Both are lessons worth mastering. So when you look down at aces, don't just see power. See perspective. See the order of truth, where knowledge flows toward patience, and patience, not pride, wins the pot. Chapter 28. Handling multiway pots with aces. There are few sights more comforting in poker than looking down at pocket aces, until you realize 3 or 4 other players are coming along for the ride. Multiway pots transform your greatest strength into something fragile. Every extra opponent multiplies the number of ways the board can turn against you. What began as a favorite against one hand becomes a coin flip, or worse when surrounded by many. Yet multiway pots are not disasters to be feared. They are tests of discipline and clarity. This chapter will teach you how to keep your composure, protect value, and navigate chaos without letting the presence of many players distort your calm. The first step is understanding the math beneath the emotion. Aces pre-flop are an overwhelming favorite against one opponent, around 80% equity. Against 2 opponents, that edge shrinks. Against 3 or more, it continues to fall. It's not because your hand is weaker, but because probability spreads across more draws, pairs, and combinations. Each player adds risk. Your goal, therefore, is to manage that risk early, not fight it later. Pre-flop, your responsibility is to narrow the field. This doesn't mean shoving recklessly. It means choosing raise sizes that discourage speculative calls. Players love seeing cheap flops, especially in casual games. Make them pay for that curiosity. If your standard raise is 3 times the big blind, increase slightly when multiple callers are likely. You're not overplaying, you're setting boundaries. The best aces win before the flop, not after. However, sometimes multi-way pots are unavoidable. Perhaps you're at a loose table where calls come easily. In those moments, shift your mindset. You are no longer playing for massive value. You are playing for survival with purpose. The hand that once felt automatic now demands mindfulness. The temptation to protect aces by betting too large after the flop only creates imbalance. In multi-way pots, large bets rarely thin the field. They just build bigger pots for others to chase. Instead, use smaller, well-structured bets that define ranges and preserve flexibility. The flop in a multi-way pot is where awareness becomes your weapon. Don't look only at your cards. Look at how the board connects to everyone else. The more coordinated the flop, the more likely it hits someone. Straight and flush draws, sets, and two-pair combinations thrive in multi-way settings. Your aces, still strong, may now be vulnerable. Bet smaller for control rather than protection. A small continuation bet forces weaker players to define themselves while keeping the pot manageable. On dry flops, such as King 7-2 Rainbow, your aces regain dominance. You can extract value calmly, one call at a time. Patience becomes critical on later streets. The turn and river in multi-way pots can turn a favorite into an underdog instantly. The more players who see those cards, the more likely someone connects. When pressure builds, trust logic, not emotion. Ask, would this opponent lead into multiple players without a strong hand? Often the answer is no. A sudden burst of aggression in a multi-way pot almost always represents real strength. Folding aces in such moments is not weakness, it's wisdom. You're not surrendering your pride, you're protecting your profit. Position becomes even more powerful in multi-way play. Acting last gives you clarity on everyone's intentions. Acting first forces you into defense. Out of position, your strategy should focus on small bets or checks, letting others reveal information. In position, you can play conductor, guiding the tempo, setting traps, or collecting value when the field weakens. Position doesn't eliminate risk, but it turns chaos into something you can read. In live poker, you can feel the tension of multi-way pots in the air. Players lean forward. The sound of chips hitting the felt sharpens. Each breath feels heavier. This atmosphere breeds mistakes, impatience, overprotection, or emotional attachment to aces. Your calm becomes your edge. While others fidget or overthink, you breathe. You remind yourself that aces are just a tool, not an identity. Online, that same tension shows in timing. Delays after the flop reveal indecision. Instant bets after dangerous turns reveal emotion. Every cue is a window into the truth. When facing multiple opponents, humility is your anchor. You no longer control the board, you manage risk within it. The old saying applies, big pots are for big hands. With aces in multi-way situations, you want medium pots. Enough to profit when you're ahead. Never so large that one bad turn card destroys your balance. Small bets, steady rhythm, and emotional detachment are your shields. Sometimes, you'll lose multi-way pots even after playing perfectly. You'll watch a weak hand chase an inside straight, or run a runner flush and get there. That sting is universal. But don't let it rewrite your principles. The purpose of discipline is not to prevent loss, it's to make loss bearable and infrequent. Over time, your calm decision-making will win far more than chance ever can. Emotionally, the key is acceptance. Multi-way pots amplify variance. You can't control outcomes, only conduct yourself through them. When the river breaks your heart, remind yourself, you gave every decision clarity, every action patience. That's what mastery looks like. Not invincibility, but balance. Pocket aces in multi-way pots teach one of poker's hardest truths. Strength without control is fragile. The hand may begin as power, but it survives through humility. You can't force the board to cooperate, and you can't silence the luck of others. What you can do is play with awareness, trust your process, and leave every table knowing you never let chaos change your rhythm. Because in poker, the player who remains calm in a crowd always sees the clearest path through it. Chapter 29. Recognizing Patterns and Player Tendencies. Poker is not a game of random chaos. It's a game of repeated behavior. Every player, no matter how skilled, leaves fingerprints on the table through their decisions. Their bet sizes, timing, expressions, and reactions form patterns that quietly tell you who they are. With pocket aces, the ability to recognize those tendencies becomes a silent weapon. You no longer play against the unknown, you play against habit. This chapter explores how to read patterns with calm awareness, how to trust what repetition reveals, and how to turn observation into effortless clarity. Patterns appear first in rhythm. Every player has one: the speed of their actions, the size of their bets, the tone of their movement. Some act quickly with strong hands and hesitate with bluffs. Others reverse it, trying to disguise intent, but revealing it through inconsistency. The first step to recognizing patterns is to slow down and watch. Most players are so focused on their own decisions that they never truly see what's happening around them. You gain an edge the moment you start listening, more than speaking. Start with pre-flop behavior. Notice who plays too many hands and who plays too few. Tight players reveal strength through patience. Loose ones reveal weakness through volume. When someone who folds 10 hands in a row suddenly raises, that action means far more than when a loose player does the same. Context transforms every move. If you track those details quietly over time, you begin to predict outcomes before cards are even dealt. Poker then shifts from guessing to pattern recognition, a calmer, more methodical form of awareness. As the hand develops, focus on bet-sizing habits. Many players unconsciously standardize their bluffs and their value bets. They might always continuation bet small when weak, or overbet large when afraid. Others change sizing based on emotion, rather than strategy. By watching enough showdowns, you can link their sizing to specific hand strengths. The goal isn't memorization, it's intuition built through exposure. After a few sessions, you'll start feeling what each player's bets mean, almost like hearing a familiar melody return. Timing tells another story. Some players act instantly when strong, eager to protect their advantage. Others delay when bluffing, searching for confidence before committing. But timing can invert as players adapt. That's why awareness must stay fluid. The real pattern isn't in the timing itself, it's in the rhythm of change. When someone suddenly breaks their usual pace, something inside them has shifted: fear, confidence, or tilt. You don't need to know why immediately. You just need to notice. Live poker gives extra texture to these patterns. The way players stack their chips, shuffle cards, or glance at the board all contribute to a psychological fingerprint. Watch what happens after they look at their cards. Do they sit upright, breathe deeper, or stay motionless? The human body can't fully hide emotion. It leaks truth in tiny gestures. The trick is to observe without judgment. Don't look for tells like a hunter. Look like an artist studying rhythm. You're not forcing conclusions. You're collecting brushstrokes until the picture becomes clear. Online, patterns live in data rather than movement. Bet sizing, frequency, and timing form digital tells. A player who continuation bets 90% of flops doesn't require guesswork. They've told you their nature through repetition. Likewise, the one who checks every time they miss has already written their weakness. Your job is to recognize these recurring notes and compose your own calm response. The beauty of pattern recognition lies in its simplicity. Once you identify a habit, you don't need to fight it. You just step aside and let it play out. Against predictable opponents, aces become easier to manage. You know when to extract maximum value and when to control pot size. Against erratic ones, you shift strategy to observation, letting them reveal themselves before acting. Either way, awareness replaces tension. You no longer chase uncertainty, you guide it. Patterns extend beyond individuals into table behavior. Entire groups develop shared rhythms. In some games, everyone becomes cautious after a big pot. In others, one player's aggression infects the table until calm returns. Recognizing those broader trends lets you adjust seamlessly. You start betting smaller when the table tightens, larger when it relaxes. You blend into the environment while staying ahead of it. Emotionally, recognizing patterns requires patience and humility. The ego wants to act quickly, to prove that you can read someone instantly. But real pattern recognition is slow. It grows quietly, through observation repeated 1,000 times. You learn that poker's truth doesn't shout, it whispers. Each repetition adds one more layer to your understanding. Over time, intuition forms naturally, not as a guess, but as the sum of everything you've seen and processed calmly. Once you start seeing patterns clearly, poker transforms. It stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like rhythm, a series of movements and responses you can almost anticipate. You begin trusting that every action carries meaning, even if it's small. And in that trust, your play slows down. You stop forcing results and start guiding the flow. Pocket aces teach you that information matters more than strength. The more patterns you see, the less you rely on luck. You win not because the cards favor you, but because you understand the people holding them. Their tendencies, their emotions, their unspoken rhythms, all become visible to the calm observer. So at your next table, let silence do your work. Watch the chips move. Hear the cadence of bets. Notice who hesitates, who repeats, who avoids eye contact when unsure. You're not reading minds, you're reading habits. And habits, unlike cards, don't change overnight. In the end, recognizing patterns isn't about prediction, it's about peace. You no longer fear what comes next because you've already seen it before. The table becomes familiar, the game slows, and your aces, steady and silent, do their work naturally. Chapter 30. The Philosophy of Pocket Aces. Pocket aces are more than a starting hand. They are a mirror, a reflection of who you are when the game gives you power. They arrive rarely, shimmering with promise, and in that moment, the table fades. You feel certainty, expectation, and quiet excitement. Yet the truth of aces lies not in their strength, but in what they teach you about control. This final chapter isn't about odds or strategy. It's about the state of mind that makes those odds matter, the calm philosophy that turns technical skill into lasting peace. Every player remembers their first aces. The rush of anticipation, the careful breath before the raise. The mind whispering, "Don't lose with these." That whisper never fully disappears. Even seasoned professionals feel it, though they learn to meet it differently. The untrained player tightens, the trained one softens. The first tries to command the outcome. The second simply lets the hand unfold. This is the essence of poker's quiet wisdom. You cannot control what comes, only how you move through it. Aces, like life's blessings, invite both joy and danger. You begin with the best, but that doesn't guarantee the ending. Every flop tests patience. Every turn tests humility. Every river tests acceptance. If you treat aces as an entitlement, the game will remind you of impermanence. If you treat them as a moment to practice discipline, the game will reward you with clarity. Winning with them feels good, but losing with them reveals who you are. The philosophy of pocket aces is built on 3 truths. The first is impermanence. Even perfection fades. Aces will lose sometimes, no matter how well you play. Accepting that early frees you from fear. The more you cling to control, the more variance feels like betrayal. But when you accept the randomness as rhythm, variance becomes part of the beauty. The cards are not against you, they are indifferent. Peace comes from meeting that indifference with grace. The second is discipline. Strength means nothing without restraint. Every decision from pre-flop to river asks the same question. Can you stay patient when everything inside you wants resolution? Aces teach you to trust logic over emotion, to choose calm repetition over cleverness. They remind you that consistency is more powerful than brilliance. The player who can fold aces when the story demands it has already mastered more than strategy. They've mastered ego. The third is presence. Poker unfolds one decision at a time. The hand you just played doesn't matter. The hand you're in is everything. Aces teach presence because they demand it. They force you to see the board clearly, to feel the rhythm of bets, to observe without reaction. When you focus entirely on the current moment, the game slows down. Noise fades. Clarity returns. That same presence that helps you with aces becomes the foundation for every other hand you'll ever play. Over thousands of hands, aces become symbols of perspective. They remind you that luck is temporary, but awareness is permanent. They remind you that even the best possible start requires patience to reach a calm finish. And they remind you that strength means nothing if it makes you restless. In live poker, you can watch this philosophy at work. The novice beams when aces appear, their excitement uncontained. The professional looks exactly the same as always, still breathing evenly, eyes calm. That stillness isn't detachment, it's alignment. They've learned that aces are neither blessing nor burden, just another part of the flow. Online, where silence replaces body language, the same lesson applies. Your calm is your structure. The steadiness of your rhythm, the pauses, the sizes, the consistency becomes your identity. Other players sense it, even without seeing you. The energy you carry through the screen affects how others react. That's the quiet power of a player who has made peace with variance. Pocket aces are the teacher. Every poker player meets again and again. They test your patience when you overvalue them, your courage when you fold them, and your humility when they lose. They're a reminder that mastery in poker is not measured in chips, but in composure. The calm player doesn't celebrate too loudly when they win, or curse too harshly when they lose. They know both are temporary waves on the same sea. When you look down at aces, feel gratitude, not greed. Let the energy of excitement become awareness. You've been given strength. Your task is not to prove it, but to guide it. Each decision that follows is a chance to practice presence. Each pot you win or lose is another quiet lesson in acceptance. In the long rhythm of poker, aces are simply moments of balance, a chance to meet power with peace. If you can treat them gently, without arrogance or fear, then every other hand becomes easier. Because what you're really learning through aces isn't how to play cards. You're learning how to remain calm while the world around you moves unpredictably. So as the session ends, and the chips return to stacks, remember this: the cards will change, the players will come and go, but the stillness you build through patience stays with you. Pocket aces were only ever a doorway, a way to see that mastery doesn't come from winning, but from the calm confidence to play beautifully, no matter the result. That's the true philosophy of pocket aces and of poker itself.